OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Okay, we were an unbelievably busy show for you, but we want to start. You may as well start with this, Shane.
Yeah, Damian Brown, a man I've been following on Instagram. A lot of people probably watching and listening will have followed him. Old Stock, I think he is on Instagram. But 1 a.m. Irish time this morning, after 2,686 hours at sea, 3,450 nautical miles, first person in history to row from New York to Galway is boat Cushla McCree. Like, to row from New York to Galway.
It's mad.
Following on Instagram, even in maybe 4 or 5 days ago, he was very concerned because the winds were pushing him south, and the Blasket Islands were behind him, and he said he could have rowed into Dingle, and that was the end of it. But symbolically, he wanted to get into Galway, obviously. And I mean, this is for people who don't realise he's a former rugby player as well. I think he had an Irish under-21 cap, but played for Connacht and maybe Leinster as well, and Brive and Oyonnax over in France. But he's an absolute inspiration. Like, to spend 16 weeks, 112 days at sea.
So the plan was 2 of them were going to do it, right?
Yeah, originally speaking, I think.
And I'd say like a minute into it, the other guy got injured and so he had to go and do it on his own.
Complete change of plan. And like, if anyone who sees him on Instagram or follows his podcast as well will know that there's been ups and downs, and days where he's on the camera crying, and days where he's absolutely buzzing, days where there's dolphins around him, he's watching the sunset, he loses something in the middle of the night to the ocean. Because you can just wake up having rowed your arse off all day long, and you can wake up and you can be way further away, and you're like, this is so, it'll break your spirit, something like that.
No detail left unpublished in the on Instagram or whatever. You know, every question you might have, how does that work? It's like, well, I'll tell you. Let me tell you how it works.
Unbelievable. My dad was unfamiliar with this story until I showed him a couple of the videos a couple of days ago, because I was like, this guy's coming into Galway. He's been rowing for 100.
I thought he wasn't getting into like 10:30 or 12:30 this morning.
So what I was reading, I actually thought the exact same. And he has. His homecoming in Galway Docks is to go ahead as planned this morning at 11 a.m. So if anyone around Galway wants to welcome him into Galway Docks, please do, because I mean, what he's done over the last number of while, he didn't make it to the port of Galway. He's now reunited with his family. It says he's in good spirits, looking forward to celebrating at 11 a.m. in Galway Docks. There's going to be a lot of people present, I'd imagine, in Galway to welcome him in, but I can't even begin to imagine what he's gone through, physically, emotionally, mentally. He's probably a man that's inspired me even without even thinking about it. I didn't
so tell us about that, because that was the bit that, go on.
Because I followed him on Instagram for a number of years, and listened to a lot of his podcasts, and I seen that he's tried to climb a number of the 7 summits. I think he tried to climb Everest a couple of years ago, and because of the weather failed, but no doubt he'll go back and do that at another time. But he's climbed Kilimanjaro, and he's climbed a lot of the 7 summits, and watching him kind of probably got me inadvertently into that whole mountaineering / adventuring sphere, and it's also just when you look at the photographs of him when he started in New York, and the size of the man's beard now that he's had weeks at sea, months at sea, sorry, just an incredible achievement. And I'm probably not the only person that's been inspired by him, and there's probably a lot of people across Ireland that probably have picked up, even going for walks, going for runs, going to the gym, almost rationalising into that. If he can do that, why can't I get up off my hole and do this? And you don't have to be someone who climbs Kilimanjaro or Everest or rows across the Atlantic, but watching what he has done probably has inspired so many people, myself included. So fair play, Damian Brown, for what you're after achieving.
It is remarkable. You could see as well yesterday on the Instagram that there were normal ferries kind of passing him, and who knew who he was, and I can only imagine how he must have felt about human contact, actual real humans, as opposed to like at the end. So he would send stuff back by satellite and have to stand out perched on the edge of the boat as the boat was going up and down, keeping it still for half an hour to send back the file of the audio and video that he recorded. So it's
funny because the videos we see on Instagram ordinarily is just obviously him in selfie mode talking to the camera, so we don't actually get to see because obviously you can't row and talk much, so we don't get to see the arduousness of it, the whole ridiculousness. But when you saw that video of the people going past, you're like, holy crap, he's rowing. Yeah, he's full on rowing across the Atlantic.
Yeah, and that's a very, very interesting point. You totally forget that he's rowing when he's like, he's not rowing when he's talking to you, but when you see him rowing, you're like, oh, that's what it looks like.
That's what that looks pretty hard. Because if you actually try to row, if you go to the gym and go onto the rowing machine for 60 seconds or even 2 minutes, I mean, you'll be bollocksed. You will, like, no matter how fit you are, and it's a tough discipline. So to see him in the water, and there was even at one point I think where he kind of surfed one of the waves. He's got so good at rowing now that he saw one of the waves coming, so he quickly rows, lets down the oars, and just surfs kind of the wave maybe 30, 40, 50 metres in to kind of save some energy. But just to see, the human contact was amazing. I think he described it in an Instagram post yesterday where he saw a boat kind of coming towards him and assumed that these were people who knew his story, but in the end it was just four heads who happened to come across him, didn't know his story whatsoever, and I think they offered him a whiskey or something, but he turned it down. He wanted to savour that moment in Galway, but they all had a whiskey for him, and they all shared a few biscuits and digestives, I think. And
what?
I mean, what a moment.
John Claffey in our comments says, and he can't swim. What a man.
I saw that somewhere. Now, I've seen there have been videos of him in the water during the trip to kind of take barnacles and stuff off the bottom of the boat. But yeah, obviously that's him just treading water. But I have heard that as well, that he actually can't swim. To row across the Atlantic solo is just ridiculous when you can't swim.
Not that it's not madness in the first place to even think about rowing across the Atlantic. But like, if there was two of them, you kind of feel like, okay, you can see how that might work. But,
it's one of the most incredible achievements I've seen in recent years. I don't want to downplay it whatsoever, because it's just, and I know I've been invested in his story and kind of following him, and it becomes a big deal as he gets closer and closer to Ireland. But it's because there's so many downs, and you think, actually, for a while he's not going to make this. He's not going to make it. And even when you're seeing him getting pushed south in the last couple of days, you're thinking, he's going to have to come into Dingle, and it's not going to mean as much to him. And
I mean, that was still okay. Fair enough. You're right. It's not what he set out to do, but it should still anyway. Yeah, he didn't. He's in Galway. He's home.
He's unbelievable. I know he did the Atlantic race a few years ago where he went from, I think, the Canaries to Antigua. And that was a massive achievement for him as well, and the emotion of the Irish tricolour and the tears and hugging his family when he got off the boat. But this means more, I think. He's done this from New York to Galway, and I remember the first Instagram images as he started off as well. You had the Manhattan skyline behind him in the background and him smiling in the boat, and you're thinking, that's a long way to Galway. I mean, even when you fly from New York to Ireland, it's ridiculous. So to do it in a boat and to row by yourself, fair play, Damian Brown. We'll have to get him into the studio when he calms down and rests for a bit.
Michael John Harris says, couldn't agree more on Damian Brown. Inspiration is overused, but he is what an achievement. Get him on the show if you can, lads, says Michael. What about them 49ers, asks David Tomney. I hate to say 85 Bears, but I'm saying it right now. From a defence perspective, if only the offence wasn't such a turkey. But anyway, they improved last night. They absolutely whooped the Rams. So maybe I was wrong about the Rams beating the Seahawks in that match that somebody's gone to. Well, I don't know. I'm refusing to believe just yet.
Eagles fans are getting excited.
Eagles fans should be getting excited. 4-0. Very dynamic young QB, really swarming defence.
And the neutral kind of wants to see the Buffalo. This is going to sound terrible. The Buffalo Bills get to their Super Bowl and
lose again.
I hate to say it.
Clip that. Can we just clip that in the Bills Mafia?
Well, I'd imagine in American culture it's probably similar to Mayo. You know, a lot of people want Mayo to get over that line, just so they can stop talking about the 50s.
Do we?
Well, this is the other side of it. We want them to get to a final and then lose. Some people, I'm not saying
it's a better story.
It's a better story.
It is.
And I feel like the Buffalo Bills in American culture is probably similar.
So many of the great institutions in Irish life have fallen apart, but Mayo failing to win in All-Ireland, that's
still there.
You can take that to the bank.
Yeah.
It's important that in this time of vast global change that something is static and
Mayo are the
trustworthy.
Yeah.
Trustworthy.
At least we know something.
I'm only joking. I want those Mayo footballers.
Yeah.
I want all of them to win an All-Ireland. I want them, if their fans could somehow be separated and not allowed. Excuse me.
I know. No, there's a man from Monaghan. I always meet him round town for coffee. Sean Monaghan is his name, and he is as Mayo to the bone as you could possibly get. He's from Lewisburg. For people like that, I kind of want them to do it, and for the players as well. Yes, I get that there's an element of the Mayo support that some people like to see lose, but for a lot of the Mayo people I know who are good people, good football people who've gone through so much pain and torture over the last
players,
the players certainly have. So yeah, Mayo, Buffalo Bills.
I mean, they've been alive. This is like, if the only thing that ever matters is winning, then that's nonsense. But the Mayo supporters have been on, like, they've been absolutely thrilled by
100%
one of the best teams of all time. beating them in finals, and they're like Kenny. Kenny's always the backdrop to these amazing goals. He's there for Beckham. He's there for Tony Yeboah. He's there for Paulo Di Canio. It's like Mayo are the same.
I don't think that's any consolation to Mayo particularly, but no, as a Monaghan fan, I'd love to have experienced what Mayo fans have got to experience. Not the torture or the heartbreak, but the All Ireland finals and the hope, which is the hope that kills you. But the build up to All Ireland finals must be, it's not something I've ever had the joy of experiencing. I think Monaghan's last All Ireland finals in the 30s against Kerry, but
whatever. Anyway, look, we'll come back to. We have a whole 18 months of this
before the Super Bowl
to talk about. 7:41 this morning. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish your day. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Mike Sherry's going to join us for the first of our depth charts. We're talking about the front row. It's all World Cup build up now, right? I mean, we've been shouting on about the World Cup for 3 years, but finally it's officially the World Cup season. I mean, it's not really. There's obviously there's a tiny little sliver of off-season next year, but Micheál Martin, not the Taoiseach, the Wexford County Board Chairman, is going to join us to talk to us about what Wexford GAA are doing to combat the recent attacks on referees. They're being proactive about that. Barry Hearn is going to join us. Plenty to talk to Barry Hearn about. The Anthony Joshua Tyson Fury fight appears to be off, but it was off last week and then it was back on, so we'll see. Obviously, Ben Eubank, the kids are fighting this weekend. He would have been centrally involved in the original 2 fights between Ben and Eubank, and there's loads more, including Katie Taylor's future and whether or not she might fight in Dublin. Things have changed in Ireland. It now might be possible to put a fight on. Sports pages at 9:10 and loads more coming your way as well on the show this morning. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to get in touch, please do. We want to talk now about Matt Doherty, who, when there was a red card at the weekend, my first reaction was, oh great, the right back's been sent off, it's good, it's Matt Doherty time. Who else could they turn to? Antonio Conte does not think that it's Matt Doherty time. At least this is what he's saying publicly, right? So this is Antonio Conte ahead of the press conference, ahead of the game against Eintracht Frankfurt in the Champions League tonight. Have a listen.
Also Doherty last season played every game, and now I'm not seeing him in the right way to start the game. I'm not stupid.
I'm not stupid. I'm not seeing him in the right way to start.
I'd love to be able to give Antonio Conte some benefit of the doubt here in terms of English not being his first language, but it's quite clear, like, for a manager to say, I want to win games, like, I'm not going to start him, I'm not stupid, essentially, is and the thing is as well, Matt Doherty wasn't the question. It wasn't the question posed to Conte. I think he was on a bit of a rant, might be a strong word, but he was certainly venting, and we know he's not going to be happy after losing a North London derby. No manager ever would be, but Doherty was kind of brought up almost by himself, so it wasn't like there was an Irish journalist or another journalist there who kind of asked the question. So yeah, Doherty must be feeling a little bit. Now, maybe Matt Doherty's. There are certain types of players who need that kick up the ass from their manager. There's certain types of players that will take that very personally and hide into themselves when they hear that. I don't know what type Matt Doherty is, but I certainly wouldn't be hearing that from your manager. At club level, who you have to meet and see every single day.
Well, you've got a choice. Doherty's not young. He can take it. There's setbacks in his life.
Well, that's it too, yeah.
And he did bounce back from being frozen out when Conte arrived to getting in the team and playing really well.
Yeah.
So do it again.
He's had, and it's, look, in the last international window, probably he wasn't one of Ireland's better players. Let's say he didn't cover himself in glory. Maybe in the Armenia game. That's not to say he played badly. He just didn't stand out maybe as much as Robbie Brady on the other flank. But just a bizarre thing for Conte to come out with, I think. I mean, it's
not ideal. It's not ideal.
No, it wouldn't be. And I know
it is the tough love that you kind of have come to expect from Antonio Conte behind closed doors.
Yeah.
It's just that he said the quiet bit out loud.
Well, the age thing is probably a good point, because when was it Mourinho was talking about Troy Parrott, and there was a few kind of almost things pointed in his direction as well. But Troy Parrott was young at that point. He was probably 17 or 18. Still is young. But Matt Doherty, maybe, yeah, he's probably of the age where he can take it, and he's more experienced, as you say. So,
well, look, I mean, from an Ireland perspective, it either means they're going to get rid of him or he's going to start playing. So,
yeah,
ideally he'd start playing, and I don't know. I mean, it's only is it going to be 3 games for Emerson Royal? So
yeah,
maybe it's not enough to re-establish himself in the team. Anyway, Danny Mack says, Conte saw him against Scotland defending. Hey, or lack thereof. Reads the comment on YouTube for us this morning. The other thing is Kieran Donaghy has come out to absolutely rubbish rumours that himself and Paul Galvin were taking over in a dream team scenario for Roscommon. This was from the Connacht Telegraph, who had the story last night. And Donaghy, I'm just going to try and find the exact quote here so I don't get it wrong.
He wasn't happy.
He wasn't happy, no. Absolute rubbish. I did not speak to one single person associated with Roscommon GAA. What has happened to fact checking a story these days? Emoji face, kind of eye roll. Face with rolling eyes is what it's officially called. WhatsApp rumours are a scary thing. Hashtag lazy journalism. Hashtag mad stuff.
Yeah. I was getting texts from a couple of people from Roscommon I know last night. Is this true? And I was like, I don't know. But the Connacht Telegraph have it. It looks fairly legit. And then, literally within half an hour, you're hearing, okay, I don't think this has legs. And then you see Donaghy's tweet, and you're like, whoa, this is it's fairly. I mean, fair play to Kieran for coming straight out and denying it, because this could have gone on for a couple of days and people were like, oh yeah, Donaghy's going to be the new manager of Roscommon. Get Paul Galvin's involved.
I mean, it's a dream team scenario.
Oh, brilliant.
I'm like, wow, that would be amazing. But look, I understand that, unfinished business, whatever. But
would have been a huge
Can we dream a little bit about it? Because I'd be very excited. I'm dying to see what Donaghy's career as a coach, like, I just think he's going to be brilliant. I just think that, like, he has a really deep understanding of what he's trying to get teams to do, and having been somebody who's had the career that he's had, I think will communicate really well with players who aren't putting in the effort, as well as he's not going to be the Roy Keane who's like, just do it.
Yeah.
He's going to technically explain how you do it, why you need to do it, the work you need to put in to get there, the sacrifice you need to make, and that little bit of nasty edge you need if you're going to make it.
Yeah.
That
was my first reaction when I saw it, was this is, if true, a big blow for Armagh. I mean, a massive blow for Armagh. It struck me as maybe a bit strange. I was like, geez, I haven't heard anything about this. This is out of nowhere, because Pat Flanagan's name was mentioned with Roscommon for ages, for weeks. And it's now the job, along with Donegal, that have just rumbled on far too long. It sounds like Donegal are going to have Rory Kavanagh maybe to take over once the unions are out of the. I think they play Naomh Conaill this weekend, beat Kilcar last weekend, so he didn't deny it in his post-match interview, Rory Kavanagh. But they're the two counties, Donegal and Roscommon, that just need to sweep this up quickly. But now the problem is Roscommon fans' expectations are now at Donaghy Galvin levels. So no matter who takes over now, is on to a loser. I'd say whoever is actually discussing this job right now with Roscommon and getting close to the job is thinking, oh, for Jesus' sake,
a little bit of like, what?
Yeah, and did you have to bring this up? I met the conspiracy theorist in me, Ger, is thinking Connacht Telegraph based in Mayo. Is this a little bit of shithousery ahead of next year's Connacht Championship?
There's a lot of shithousery going on at the moment with regards to GAA rumours, all that the JP stuff in Limerick was it just started by one Tipperary guy on Twitter.
Well,
was that where is that, I mean
see, people are so desperate for news now within counties that they see something on Twitter and they just go for it. They just go for it
because of the split season. One of the unintended consequences is you're going to get a load of shit talked in the off season from lads who have never down the club in their lives.
There's other Twitter rumours last night linking Jason Sherlock to the Roscommon job, which I find fascinating. But again, Twitter rumours, not putting any weight on them. But Sherlock, of course, was very close to taking the Monaghan job, and then pulled out of the running. But this silly season of GAA managerial merry-go-rounds has me. I actually love it. I think it's great, and to see the Donaghy stuff last night, I'm glad it was quashed quickly. For Kieran,
I would have liked a couple of days of speculating about it. That would have been, as the inter-county off season is in full throw.
Interesting 40 minutes for Roscommon fans.
Exactly.
That's pretty much all it lasted for.
Exactly. Bobby Dwyer says, I'm looking forward to watching this generational Arsenal team in the Champions League this evening. He is, of course, a Spurs fan, so I suspect you're not really looking forward to it. But, Shifty Lad says, I followed Damien for a long day now and he must be freakishly strong. He was training late at night before the starting, pushing sledges, etc. But his voice and the way he talks is very gentle. So,
there's a bit of an orator about him, a philosophical brain as well. I think that's what makes the podcast and the Instagram videos so fascinating as well. He's got a great voice and a great attitude, and he's patriotic, and he wanted symbolically to get into Galway And any challenge that kind of befell him, and plenty did over the 112 odd days, he just rode that wave, if you'll excuse the pun. He's a really, really intrepid guy, a really obviously a physically strong human being, but more so just a mentally tough individual. Like, no matter what was thrown at him, he was able to bounce back.
But who at every stage would say, I'm not feeling it right now, and would address the fact that, like, this is a struggle and I'm really struggling, and talking about that, I think, is the bit where
there was no filter over the whole thing,
and it's where the strength comes from.
He was fully open, and it wasn't an Instagram job of 112 days. It was fully, this is what humans looked like doing this.
This is how you poo at sea when there's no one to I have to put an anchor down for this. Right. Okay, we've done all that. If you want to get in touch with us, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or of course you can always leave a comment on the YouTube stream as well. Now, Kathleen McNamee is with us. We're talking about the Republic of Ireland and the latest injury crisis that has befallen us. So it's, what are we, 10, 12, 14 days out from the Ireland game against an as yet unknown opponent, either Scotland or Austria?
Yeah, it's not looking good. We lost Jess over the weekend. She was stretchered off during the Conte Cup game, West Ham against London City Lionesses. Hopefully, there's been no word yet how bad the injury actually is. They did say it was a knee injury, which generally, when you hear that in women's football, that's not a good sign. That means you're out for quite a few months. But yeah, just another player to lose. I mean, we've already lost Ruesha Littlejohn, Megan Connolly, Leanne Kieran, Ellen Malloy. Just all these names that you were quite familiar with from the starting team, and it's not exactly the sort of preparation that Vera Pauw will want going into camp. I think they're heading in today and they've a few warm-up games ahead of the match, and then they'll watch the playoff together on Thursday, and then our match will start at the proper prep once we know who we're facing.
We still haven't got a kick-off time yet for that game, because if it's going to be in Scotland, it'll be a different kick-off time from if it's going to be in Austria, and it's the same night that Celtic are playing in the Champions League. So, I mean, Hampden Park will be pretty empty, will it? Or will they manage to get a good crowd on the night of a Champions League game? It's kicking off at the same time?
No, I think it's going to be pretty empty. I didn't really expect that massive a crowd at this game anyways, just considering how late it's all going to be in terms of finding out who you're playing, where you're playing, whether it's in Austria or whether it's in Scotland. It's not going to be exactly the sort of atmosphere you'd want for this sort of World Cup playoff, and it makes the whole process seem even sillier that, you know, you would have it so close together, because it's such a good opportunity to have a crowd. I mean, you could imagine if it was Ireland-Scotland, we knew it was coming even a month or two in advance, there'd be loads of people who'd happily bop over to Hampden Park. And I mean, we saw the atmosphere that there was when Nathan was there a couple of weeks ago. You know, it's a great place to go. It would have been a great event and a great night, but it's just a bit of a shame that it's all been so rushed, if that's where we end up going. We could also end up in Austria, who knows?
I feel like the closer it gets, and I was reading the match day notes from the Ireland-Armenia game there before the game. Jonathan Hill, the FAI CEO, was kind of pointing out how important it was from an inspiration point of view for the 21s and the women's team. He was wishing them the best of luck, basically, to get to major tournaments, and how big an impact. Now, obviously, the 21s sadly couldn't achieve it, but if this women's team can get to a major tournament, the impact it's going to have for young girls and young boys in the country. But to see them at a major tournament, it would be so disappointing to get this close and not get over the line. But there's a lot more nerves the closer this game gets, I think, Kathleen.
Absolutely. And I obviously listen to the show every morning, and we spent most of last week talking about Stephen Kenny and what we wanted this team to achieve, and how much faith we've put into the men's side, and how great it would be to actually make a tournament with them, because everyone's rooting for them. And Adrian did a really great piece on Friday talking about, the age his kids are at, and the fact that it doesn't really matter what team it is. If someone goes to a major tournament, they're at the stage where they're ready to jump on that bandwagon and they're ready to just have a bit of fun. And I think we've seen that time and time again in Ireland when it comes to sports teams who do well. It doesn't matter if you've never watched hockey or rugby or football or whatever it is. We're the sort of nation that we see a team doing well and we're like, yeah, let's go, let's have some fun and enjoy it. So I think it will be really important. And I think it's really important for the development of this squad in particular. They've been through so much over the last few years, from the days of Liberty Hall to not qualifying for the Euros, to now being on buses, being on billboards. Everyone knows their names. It's not people know names like Jess or Megan Connolly or Ruesha Littlejohn. don't just know the Katie McCabe's and the Denise O'Sullivans. So I don't want to say there's everything is riding on this, but I just think it's the perfect moment for the wave to crest and for them to go to that major tournament and us to all go along with it and have like a great time in general. Yeah.
It's a big generational moment, opportunity. Now, here's the thing. The Euros, almost certainly they will qualify for, because they're definitely in the top number of teams who will qualify in Europe for the Euros. So it's coming, but it would just be good if they could accelerate that process. And some of those players are at the peak of their powers at the moment. And, anyway.
I don't think I can take seeing Katie McCabe and Denise O'Sullivan that disappointed again if they don't make it to another major tournament. But Denise O'Sullivan sitting on the pitch after we didn't qualify for the Euros for about an hour afterwards, just kind of looking around her, tears in her eyes, will live with me for the rest of my life. So,
well, hopefully she's using that now to brood and will unleash hell on Scotland/Austria it's 2 weeks tomorrow, is it? It's Wednesday, or is it Tuesday?
It's the 11th, isn't it?
That'll be a week today.
Yes, that's a week, yeah.
Closing in.
Right.
It's close, yeah.
So the Scotland game is Thursday, and then ours, I thought there was 10 days between them, no? Or a week between them. It's the following Tuesday.
Oh, maybe I've missed my timings.
We'll get that for you. Again, that's the situation with regards to that. So who fills in for Jess who?
I reckon there'll probably be a bit of a shift around in the team. So I think they'll possibly have to push Heather Payne out onto the wings, bring someone up front. Depends on who you want to do, and then maybe play Jamie Finn Morris centre mid rather than out in the wings where she has been the last while. So it will take a bit of, there definitely are the players in the team. It's just going to take a little bit of a tinkering around with how we play. And we know Vera doesn't really like doing that. She tends to stick with the same teams, so it'll also depend as well on injuries, because I know Lucy Quinn played quite well at the weekend, so she could be the one that comes in up front. But then Amber Barrett as well is also another option, but she was injured, or she came off injured at the weekend, so I'm not entirely sure what her situation is. I think she's being assessed this week.
Looks like it's this day next week. The game Ireland against Scotland or Austria, they play Scotland and Austria play this Thursday, so it is a quick turnaround for the winner of Scotland and Austria. Obviously they have home advantage against Ireland, so there is that, but could be a you'd like to see, you hate to say it, a few suspensions / injuries.
We need a massive brawl.
Yeah, all out.
Well, I've heard
our mass stuff
from the grapevine. I've heard that Scotland are in a very good place. They feel very confident. They're really happy with their coach.
That's where we want them,
They
Kathleen.
have a fully fit team. Like they're going into this on a high. So if it is them we're facing, then we're going to need to bring our best. I think I would actually kind of prefer to play Scotland. I think it would be a more entertaining match, just even in terms of the rivalry across the sea.
Okay, you're an Arsenal fan. I think we should establish this. We've been getting a lot of grief about all the Manchester United conversation we had. Arsenal chat 4 segments on United yesterday, says Micheál O'Connor. Just ignore the Arsenal comment. Cheers.
Micheál, here we go.
You know what? We're happy. We're basking in the glow of being top of the table. We don't need you guys to fulfill us.
We had this conversation before the international break where we're like, when do we start talking about Arsenal as potential title contenders?
In May.
Still having because it's Arsenal.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. I have no faith that this is going to continue. Like, I'm really enjoying where we're at the moment, and I'm really enjoying watching this team play, but I've been burned so many times before that I just don't trust that it's going to last past Christmas. I actually, to be fair, if I look at it really rationally, I do think if we can manage to avoid too many serious injuries, Arsenal could go on a decent run this year. I don't think they're going to challenge City for the title. I know a few people have mentioned it, and some people have just straight up laughed at it. That would probably be me. We had Nadim on yesterday, and he kind of said, like, if Arsenal beat all the lower teams and, like, that's 60 odd points, they could challenge City a little bit. They're not going to do that while Erling Haaland is around. Even if City do drop points, Arsenal will definitely drop points somewhere along the way. But it is nice to just see the team actually playing with some proper style, proper formation. It seems like everyone knows what their role is, and it seems like everyone's quite happy in that. And I remember one of the first times I ever came on off the ball, Owen asking me, did I think Arteta was the right man? And I was like, give him 3 or 4 years. I think that's the time he needs to, like, unpick everything that's happened in Arsenal and where they are now. And I'm not going to say I was right, but for now, I'll take the plaudits.
It's Haaland is the difference. If Haaland wasn't in that City team, we would actually be talking about Arsenal a bit more. It's game over.
Yeah,
he's ruined the spectacle.
Well, I mean, City were already very dominant. If you had taken Liverpool out of previous seasons, like, look, Arsenal have had an excellent start to the season. They did get exposed a little bit by Manchester United in a game where they could easily have won if they were a bit more ruthless. And so that was one of those things where you're like...
I think as well, though, like the mental thing with United took over a little bit. Like Arsenal just have this, especially, I don't know what it is. They play United certain times and it's like they just forget everything that they've done before, and they...
Not a great trait in a team, you'd have to say.
No,
slightly worrying.
But I mean, it's one of your like biggest rivals as well over the last like couple of decades. To me, they just struck me as a team that were like, they got stage fright or something. And I totally agree that's not a great trait to have in a team at all, but I don't know if there are many other teams that they would experience that against.
Kathleen, the biggest story in women's soccer at the moment is confirmation late last night coming from a report by the former acting Attorney General Sally Yates and the law firm King and Spalding that they concluded that at the top level of women's professional soccer in the US, players were subjected to pervasive, systemic and widespread sexual abuse and harassment, and the NWSL, the governing body, and US Soccer did little to stop it. So this is a report, I think it's 310 pages, and people are just beginning to digest the contents of the report, which are absolutely horrific, but also the consequences and what's going to happen next. So I know you haven't had a chance to read the full report just yet, but certainly the top line reporting on it is beginning to paint a fairly horrific picture.
Yeah, it's not great. I think I've read about 200 pages of it, and it is one of those reports that you need to stop and take breaks every so often. I mean, no one was surprised necessarily reading this. I think what was surprising wasn't so much the contents, it was the depths of cover-up and the amount of times the teams involved were told this person has done something or allegations have been brought against this person and nothing was done. Like, they may have been let go from an organisation, but whichever team picked them up next weren't warned about it, or they were warned about it and just didn't do anything. And that's like, we saw up to 5 different firings or people leaving the NWSL last year because of these allegations. So everyone knew they were in the pipeline. I just don't think anyone knew how truly awful some of them were, and also how much very high up people had covered them up. The former commissioner Lisa Baird left last year because it was found that the NWSL had been told several times that there were several coaches in their system that were abusing players. And she initially, whenever the reporting came out from The Athletic, said that she wasn't aware of it and then they were going to do whatever they could to support players. And then emails came up that showed that she had been told about it a couple of months ago. But this literally goes like right to the very, very core of US football. Some of the people named in the report are the most well-known names, and not even just US football, like women's football across the world. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the fallout is from this, and you have to give full credit to, you know, Manashim and Sinead Farley. They were the 2 players that first came out last year, went to The Athletic, reported what they had gone through, and that was the thing that sent all of this in motion. And if they hadn't done that then, it's really hard to see where we would be now. Like, this whole report wouldn't have happened. And also, it was mentioned in the report that there was several allegations brought forward that they just didn't have time or they didn't have the resources to investigate. So there's possibly other stuff still to come out that we don't even know about. So I think it's a really important step for US soccer, but it's also really important for world football to see that, you know, you can't get away with these things. Eventually it will catch up with you and there will be repercussions.
These coaches, some of them still active. This isn't a historic abuse story. This isn't like the 50s, 60s, 70s or 80s. This is ongoing. This is like in the last couple of years.
Most of this would be from the last 20. So most of the coaches that are mentioned in the report were all still coaching last season. And if not last season, the season before. So it's very, very recent. And all of these coaches have been in the coaching sphere for the last 20 years. You know, they're not they're not casual names. They're not people that you wouldn't know about. They are names that you would know if you follow women's football. And also a lot of them would have worked in youth soccer as well, which is one of the things. The report doesn't go into youth soccer, it just focuses on NWSL, but they make it very, very clear that this abuse starts at that level and it continues up to the senior ages. So even when you think about it from that perspective, that's, you know, young girls that are being subjected to this and then being subjected to it as grown women as well. And this circle of abuse is so strong that there's no way out. There's nowhere for you to go. If you've reported it to the highest people you can and they don't do anything and you keep seeing this person getting a job year after year after year, what are you supposed to do? A lot of these women left the league and left football because that was the only recourse they could see to actually keep themselves safe and keep themselves in a protected place.
So the Federation had commissioned the study after that story in The Athletic, and similar charges were reported in the Washington Post from other people. And then the fallout forced the resignation or the removal, still to be confirmed, of the Commissioner, the General Counsel, and 5 of the league's 10 coaches.
Yeah, it was massive. It was. I remember when I was reporting on it at the time for ESPN, and just every day being completely bewildered that something else was coming out about another coach. And you know, the league at the time did what they could in terms of players. They, in the middle of a game, they took a minute's silence, and like both sides and all the management like linked arms and just stood there, and it was incredibly powerful. Yeah, because of the time difference, I remember watching it. It was like 2-3 a.m. our time, and just sitting in my kitchen, just like a silent tear running down my face, because I think you watch what these women go through and you know that it's not just in football, it's not just in sport. This is something that we see across workplaces. It's something that every woman has probably either experienced or heard one of her friends experience before. So it was just incredibly powerful to see these women coming together, and they did it by themselves. This was purely the players and ex-players coming forward and saying, I experienced this, I'm going to talk about it because I don't want this to happen to other people. And no matter how much the higher ups tried to push them down or tried to push the story down, they still managed to come to the top with it. And I think, you know, full credit goes to them for that, especially even players like Alex Morgan, who is one of the most well-known footballers in the world. She was one of the main people that pushed these women who, or not pushed them, supported these women who had left the league, who wanted to come forward with their stories, who wanted to come talk about it, and used her power in that way to help support them in the background. And then only when it all came out, even then she was kind of still in the background, but she was then using her voice, using her platform to promote them more and to make sure that these clubs who, and even the report says that a lot of the clubs that everyone knew were letting these allegations just go by, actually tried to stop the report happening and tried to stop witnesses coming forward, tried to stop access to documents. So despite everything that they said last season, that they wanted to, you know, fully cooperate, fully help, take these people out of circulation, they were still trying to stop it all coming out until the very last minute. So
yeah, the report concluded multiple players informed teams, the league and US Soccer about misconduct, but those reports were ignored. It also says this isn't confined to the professional league. Abuse in the NWSL is rooted in a deeper culture in women's soccer, beginning in youth leagues, that normalises verbally abusive coaching and blurs the boundaries between coaches and players. So, I don't know, is the publication some kind of a wake-up call for women's soccer, for the authorities, for people outside women's soccer to take a deeper look at that pervasive culture?
I hope so. I feel like we've been here before, and you know, if last year even just the initial reporting that came out wasn't enough of a wake-up call, and some of these clubs were still trying to sweep things under the rug in the year since, I don't know how optimistic I am that it'll be a massive wake-up call, but I think it's really important that it is being talked about. It is something that, you know, people, you can't ignore it. Like if you read, even if you read some of the articles about the report and not the report itself, you cannot ignore how horrendous some of the abuse that was going on was. And I really hope that it causes other federations, other journalists, other people in countries all over the world to take a bit of a closer look at the systems that are in operation, because there's no way that this is limited to the NWSL. I mean, we saw it with the French Federation being accused of hiding up similar things a couple of weeks ago. This is happening all over the place. Hopefully now this has come out, people will see there is repercussions, that there are ways that you can get your story told, and there are people who will support you in that. It's a hard process, it's a long process, but the recourse is there.
Yeah, there's a phrase about this being an open secret because it was so pervasive.
Well, there was always rumours, say, like certain, because of the way the draft system works in the US, you know, you could be told day to day that, okay, well, your rights have been sold to this club and you have to go there. And there had been reports of some of the coaches that are mentioned in the report, players not wanting to report to them and just doing whatever they can, taking contracts abroad, because you can do that. You can still have, your rights can still be owned in the US, but you can still go to Europe or Australia or wherever. Them trying to find overseas deals so they didn't have to work with certain coaches. You talked to a lot of the US reporters. A lot of this stuff was known, but it was just getting someone to come forward. And that's why I was saying earlier that what Mana Shim and Sinead Farrelly did was so important, and Micheál as well. There was a couple of players, because they broke that barrier. They were the first ones that said, okay, we're going to stand up, we're going to say something. And that gave other people the gap to go through. It gave other people the space to do it. And it just takes one a lot of the time for these things to open up in that way, and it becomes less of an open secret. Yeah, so we can expect more, much more to come, because as you said, the scope of this investigation was quite narrow. It took a long time, but I guess in retrospect, the fact that it took a long time is probably good, because it means that it's going to be very robust from a legal perspective, and it's going to stand up to scrutiny from the lawyers of the people who are named and accused. But it does then allow the next bunch of investigations to dig similarly deep into other allegations that are out there at the moment. Exactly. It sets the foundation and it sets the precedent. And I think when you look at the amount of documents that were coming through, I know Sally Yates and the US Soccer Federation and NWSL Players Association, all these different groups that were involved in it, all said at different times, like, the scale of reports that they were getting through and the scale of people coming to them was massive. So the fact that something has come out, and it's come out in a relatively short time frame, in the sense that, you know, people can still remember the league last year when players took that stance. People can still remember these stories. I think it is important that it was quite a tight time frame, but also there was one line in the report where I think Sally Yates said something about, you know, we wanted to get this out in a very quick time frame, so we didn't investigate certain things. I hope that doesn't mean that those go uninvestigated, that this is just like the starting block and like, okay, we've looked at these things, now we're going to set up another commission and we're going to look at youth soccer, or we're going to look at other areas that maybe we just didn't have the time to do now. Because if we've learned anything from the very basic parts of this report, it's that this is going on in a lot of places, and this is by no means the end of it.
Yeah, the US Federation, in fairness to them, have immediately established an Office of Participant Safety, published soccer-related records from Safe Sports' centralised database of officials and coaches who've been investigated or sanctioned for misconduct, which is exactly what you need. It's like Coach A gets accused of something in one place and then 6 months later fetches up on the other side of America, and nobody knows anything about the fact that the reason they left under a cloud was because they'd been accused of something. And then also they're going to have background checks and create a participant safety task force led by athletes themselves, but they do need to investigate those other ones as well. So look, it's a developing story. We will continue to cover it. Kathleen, great stuff. Thanks a million for bringing us up to date on that. It's 14 minutes past 8. We've got to take a quick break. We're back on the other side with the first depth chart of the new season.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Sivo going on his own. He gets the try.
The Red 78.
We're both Munster people.
Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
Carver gets over the line. Try from Munster.
Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Okay, a reminder for you, Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of OTB. Each week we're giving one lucky viewer a €100 voucher to spend on some Braeburn coffee goodness at an Apple Green store near you. To enter, check out @OffTheBall on Twitter. Like and retweet our Braeburn competition post and you'll be in the draw. Braeburn Coffee never compromises on quality or taste to give you the best on-the-go coffee experience on the road. It's available at Apple Green today. Now, to the front row depth chart. This is officially the start of our World Cup countdown. Mike Sherry, good morning to you. Oh, you're on mute, I think. Either on our side or on your side. No, it must be on us. Yeah. We'll get you back in 1 second. I build it up. I'm the circus ringmaster, and
we better be quick because
the lion comes out and goes.
There's only a year to go. We better be quick getting this build up in. It's exciting. No, it is exciting. A lot of nervous players probably listening in this morning, waiting to see where they are in the depth chart.
Yeah. Okay, we got you back, Mike. How are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, this time perfect. Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Look, we're being mildly facetious when it comes to the World Cup countdown, because we should stop living in the prison of only ever seeing Irish rugby through the World Cup and just enjoy it for what it is. But at the same time, it is a World Cup season, and so while we might be talking about it, obviously within the Ireland camp they're thinking about it. That's why we have the Emerging Ireland tour as well. So when it comes to the depth chart for the front row, is it very obvious at the moment? And is that one of the problems we have? Is that the gap between our front line, first choice, and the lads who are coming behind them is just a bit too big?
Yeah, like I put it together yesterday on the back of an envelope, and there was nothing surprising there. Like, I was writing names. It's kind of par for the course. Pretty much who's first choice, who's second choice. There's a little bit of debate about hooker, I would imagine. Dan Sheehan, Ronan Kelleher. I would say Dan is ahead at the minute, based off the fact of his own form, and Ronan's had a couple injuries. But overall, it's pretty well set now at this stage, and it's getting the depth underneath to be able to deal with any injuries is probably the main concern feeding into it.
And the depth isn't the problem just for Ireland. It's actually a problem for the provinces as well, where they're constantly trying to hothouse new, younger, particularly props. How difficult is it for somebody to get up to speed at the very top level so that you can go from playing URC to Heineken Cup? What's the difference in terms of scrummaging from your perspective and what you would have experienced as a player?
Between URC and Heineken Cup? Yeah, look, it is a big step up. It's a whole different week, different environment, different atmosphere you're playing. Like, you can go from playing, Dragons, a couple of thousand, to an absolutely packed out Thomond Park. So it's a different beast entirely. And then the step up to international. Wish I could give you a bit more of an insight into the step up from European rugby to international, but again, I would imagine it's a huge step up again. So going through those building blocks of club rugby, A rugby, URC, European, and then into international rugby takes time. And like you say, they are trying to shoehorn a few guys in, but they have to do that, and it's either sink or swim. Where
do you stand, Mike, on the Emerging Ireland tour itself? Like, I know there's been a bit of back and forth of controversy before it ever started, but is it a legitimate, I guess, opportunity for some of these players to stake a proper claim for squad selection?
Some, I would imagine. The likes of Frawley, Balakoon. I would think overall it's more to get a look at the guys in the environment, travelling, getting to see them, how their personalities work in a group atmosphere and an environment like that. The quality of games looks to be pretty low, unfortunately. I heard someone saying during the week that possibly a good AIL team would have given the emerging team a better game than they just played. So from that point of view, it's a little disappointing. But there are some there. Overall, I wouldn't imagine too many of the people down there, or players down there, will feature in the touring squad to the World Cup.
Yeah, I suppose the other thing is that from it's an opportunity for that coaching ticket to develop as well, and to kind of have, this is the first time they not had Andy Farrell in the room going, okay, we're going to do it this way and this way and this way and this way. So from Easterby's perspective, I'd say it's a good opportunity for him to spread his wings a bit and to get a taste of what it's like to be the lead, and even just for the rest of them, like that's probably an under remarked upon part of that whole tour. Is like, that's an interesting that's a decision. That was interesting. But anyway, to go back to the front row, what do you learn from being pitched into Heineken Cup games? Like, do we need to do we need to bite the bullet this season a little bit and give some players who might not be first choice experience of being in the scrum? When you're saying it's a different week, is it a different match experience as well? Like, you're obviously against better players. What's the impact on your own performance when you're against a better player in the scrum?
It can be one of two ways. You can up your performance knowing that if you're not at a certain level, you can be put back in your box pretty quickly and be a weakness in the team, and any weakness at that level is exposed, or it can get to you and you ultimately are exposed. Yeah, look, what I mean by it's a different week, there's just more scrutiny, there's more media attention, there's like when I was leaving rugby, they were similar weeks. From when I first got involved with the Munster team in 2009, there was a definite difference between the week of a Magners League, as it was then, match as opposed to European match. Not in terms of a lackadaisical attitude, but it just was different. There was a different playing group, first of all, and there wasn't as much attention on it. It wasn't do or die. So that's kind of the difference. Like with Munster anyway, over the last 20 or so years, it's completely do or die in European Cup rugby. Obviously, we need to, I suppose, not lower our expectations, but make them more realistic. That, you know, you can't look to win both tournaments every single year, and then if you don't, it's an absolute write-off of the season, which is what it appeared in the noughties. If Munster didn't win the European Cup, it was, you know, this is a disaster of a season, or that's not realistic anymore. But it's just more pressure on you to perform, bigger crowds, more media attention, and a higher level of rugby and competition. Okay,
let's get into the depth chart. So at loose heads, we have, it's very clear pecking order. Andrew Porter's number 1. On your list, you have Cian Healy 2, Dave Kilcoyne 3, Jeremy Lukeman 4, and James Cronin 5. So Andrew Porter is one of those undroppables from Ireland's first choice team, right? He's established himself as somebody who's at the very top level of the game at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Other than injury, he's going to be one of the first names on the team sheet. Playing significant minutes as well. You're looking at 60, 70 minutes sometimes, which is rare enough for a prop, but that's the situation we're in. That's the level he's playing at. And that's not to disparage what's beneath him, but he's just operating at a very, very elite level at the minute.
You've got Cian Healy down as a loose head. Is that where he is now from your perspective? Do you think that's like how the last few years of his career is going to finish up? Because there was some talk about maybe him finishing out as a sub off the bench or an emergency tight head.
Yeah, perhaps if they're in a bind. I see him as a loose head. He's played there for 15 years now at this stage, and a really good guy to bring off the bench. He kind of peaks and troughs. He goes through really good patches of form, which he seems to be in at the minute. He's not getting too much rugby. I know he made his 250th appearance there a few weeks ago, which again is incredible considering the amount of international rugby he's played as well. So look, he's a brilliant guy to have there, and on his day he's world class as well. But I just think Porter has perhaps gone to the level Keane was at maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Is there anybody else on that list? So Dave Kilcoyne, Jeremy Lukeman, James Cronin, who could see a peak? Like what's Jeremy Lukeman's ceiling?
He's a really talented player. Yeah, he's an athlete. He's very fast, very skillful. A couple of years ago, people always refer to it, but I think he threw out like a 30-metre spin pass off his left-hand side out the wing in a European game when he was on in full motion. So, you know, it's not many props that can do that. I know Tyke Furlong probably makes us all think it's easy for props to do that, but it's not. And he's a really good player. He's had a couple of injuries. He's in the environment. He's gone on tour with them. They know what he's like, and yeah, he's got a lot of potential. He's still young. I think one interesting one is James Cronin. I don't think you can ignore the fact that he's starting week in, week out for Premiership winners, Leicester. They're absolutely entrenched in set piece, scrum, maul. All that is what the club is built on. And if he gets a run of form, he's a really, really good player. He's matured a lot. He's gone through a lot. I read a nice article with him last week. So I just think he's in a very good place. I met him over the summer, and he was loving the environment. And, you know, if you're playing week in, week out for a team like Leicester, it's very hard to ignore considering the lack of depth we have here.
one of those players who maybe, obviously is not up for selection at the moment, but who, in case of emergency, we could break glass for a World Cup?
He is.
No, we could, if we needed to, we could say, right, look, we're changing the rules. It's the World Cup.
Sorry, guys. I thought you were going to announce someone there as well.
Oh, no.
The name drop. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the rules could be changed for him. Prop is an area that we just can't go in undercooked or under-resourced to a World Cup. Helps that it's in France. It's not the big, massive travel over. But, he's played there before. I know he's only got 3 caps, which I found incredible. Having played with him for years, himself and Dave Cocoyne were competing against each other for the past 10 or 12 years in Munster, and one of them would get injured, the other one would get in and have a great run of form and get up with Ireland, and then vice versa would happen. But I've a lot of time for him as a player. I think he's very good on his day.
Okay, to hooker, you've already said you think Dan Sheehan is slightly ahead of Ronan Kelleher at the moment. The cliche we throw out in this show all the time, the best ability is availability. Dan Sheehan has largely been bulletproof, and Ronan Kelleher has been very unfortunate with injuries. It's kind of nip and tuck, is it? Or are you starting to see Sheehan create a bit of separation in terms of the pecking order?
Look, when you're scoring 4 tries in a game, it's very hard to ignore that. Now, I know he's not doing much of the work. He's hanging off the back of them all, but he's incredibly dynamic. Throwing technique is excellent. He had 2 crookeds against Ulster, but they were tired throws, and he was putting himself around the pitch. In general, his throwing is excellent. It's a little concerning about Kelleher. He's picking up injuries now. He had surgery over the summer. I know from experience it's a very attritional position, and if you get in a bad run of injuries, it's hard to get back up to the level you're at. Now, he hasn't had too many to the point where it might be detrimental to his overall performance and ability, but you'd like to see him get a clean bill of health leading up into the November internationals and then the Six Nations, and then it's a really, really good contest between the 2 guys for both Leinster and Ireland. I think we're blessed. The 2 of them are absolutely world class on the day, so if they're fit, we're very well served there.
That attrition point is an interesting one, Mike, because I was looking back last night just before we had you on this morning at Keith Wood's front row depth chart from, I think it was the start of last year, where he had Rob Herring as number 1. He obviously mentioned Dan Sheehan as kind of the next generation, but is it age profile that goes against someone? Like, I know you have Rob Herring in his number 3 there, but when you're looking for a World Cup next year, I think Dan Sheehan has maybe 7 or 8 years on Rob Herring. Is that kind of what you're looking for here, that you need someone young, someone with a bit of less mileage on the clock maybe for a World Cup?
Not particularly, to be honest. I just think Dan is at the minute performing to a level that he makes himself number 1 regardless of his age or experience. I think Rob is a really good guy to have for a match that maybe you want to rest your frontline players for, but you still want to keep consistency. He's a brilliant thrower of the ball, really good around set piece, and he's a good player around the park as well. So if there was an injury, he's an excellent guy to to fill in, and also to rest guys while maintaining a high level. He's probably at that level where he's just below the 2 guys. So yeah, that's kind of where I'd have him, regardless of his age or experience.
How close are Heffernan and Scannell to Herring?
It's kind of a supporting cast to the 2 guys. I think they prefer Herring. I think his set piece work is very strong, and he has a bit of dynamism around the pitch. I think Dave Heffernan would perhaps be more dynamic around the pitch, but maybe doesn't have as strong a set piece as Rob. And then Niall Scannell is very strong around set piece. Maybe his work around the pitch wouldn't be quite at the level of Dan Sheehan or Ronan Kelleher. So again, 3 really good guys to have in your squad will absolutely fulfill a role and perform at a level when you need them to. But I think the two Leinster guys have pushed themselves to where they're in conversations around some of the most dynamic and best hookers in Europe, if not world rugby at the minute.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely separation between those 2. At tight head, again, Tyke Furlong, there's no one going to have any argument here. You got Finlay Bealham 2nd, Tom O'Toole 3rd, John Ryan 4th, and Marty Moore 5th. I don't think Marty Moore's been around the Ireland squad too much since he's come back to play his rugby in Ireland. But is there a world in which you bring somebody like Marty Moore on the occasion where you're up against a team who are potentially going to scrummage you off the park, where if let's assume Furlong plays, right? But if there is, say we're going up against South Africa, is there a world in which you decide, actually, you know what, I'm going to put Marty Moore out there and he's going to lock down that scrum for us, and we're going to have no concerns about getting our own ball back when we have it, and we're going to have no concerns about conceding penalties when they have it? Like, because I just heard in commentary the other night somebody say, it's a great position for Ulster to be in, to have their best scrummager coming off the bench. And I'm like, is there, World Cup is a weird thing where you play 3 games in 2 weeks and then massive games week on week, and the attrition rates, as you've talked about, are massively high. Is there a world in which you bring somebody who is just there to lock down the scrum for half an hour or 20 minutes in a game, and you go, well, that was a strategic decision that we made? He might not actually be the second or third best tight heads that we have.
I see a world in where that happens. I have John Ryan ahead of him. Obviously, John is over in England now. The only reason I have him ahead of him is he's been involved with the squad more recently than Marty. I don't think I can remember the last time Marty was involved in the squad. It's been several. But as you said, he is one of, if not the best, scrummaging tight heads in the country. And the fact that it's in France, maybe you don't bring him in your initial squad, but he's training away, keeping fit with Ulster, playing rugby, and he's there if you need to call him in. Maybe he's a little bit outside their thinking at the minute, but to have him in the back pocket is hugely beneficial. And maybe there's something that we don't know about, that he's not involved in the squads. Maybe there's an aspect of his game that the coaches have asked him to work on, and it hasn't got to the level that they wanted to be. But from a purely scrummaging point of view, a guy like him is invaluable. So if they're struggling, if they're coming up against a big pack, he's a good card to draw.
Is familiarity important there, Mike, as well? Like, it obviously strikes me that Porter, Sheehan, Furlong, hard to argue with any of the 3, all Leinster players as well. Like, the fact that they're kind of used to playing with each other at provincial level, is that an important aspect to this too, when you're picking your first 3?
Yeah, it would be. Look, the more reps you can get, line out, scrum, maul, the better. The more combinations you can... the more comfortable you can be in your combination, the better for everyone. The 3 lads plus Kelleher, they'll be scrummaging day in, day out with each other up in Leinster, and then when they go to Ireland camp, it's second nature to them. So it definitely aids their ability to perform and build up a relationship with each other. And all this counts. How much you want to help your buddy out beside you, as opposed to some new guy coming in. And I'm not saying you'll drop your levels, but it all feeds into the psychology of it and that extra 1% of your performance.
One last question for you: is there anybody outside this list who you think might be a bolter, potential for a World Cup?
Here, put me on the spot here. I'll go back to my envelope and see if I had any names scribbled down. Is there anyone? Josh Wycherley is someone I probably should have mentioned. He's involved with the emerging squad. He's been up in Ireland camps. Possibly on the loosehead side, he could be involved. If Ireland are very strict on not using anyone from England, he could go in there ahead of James Cronin. But no, it's something that I know I have 5 in each position there. All 5 are good players, but a couple injuries and we are quite bare. So
yeah.
One probably needs to put their hand up in the next 5-6 months of the season and maybe get into an Ireland camp over the summer. But there's no one that really stands out at the minute.
Well, fingers crossed somebody does put their hand up as well, and we'll all be praying to whatever we believe in that front row doesn't get injured. Mike, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers, lads. Nice to talk.
That's the first of our rugby depth charts of the new season for you. Front row with Mike Sherry there. If you want to get in touch with us, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can always leave a comment on the YouTube stream. A reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Now, do you want to spend the night with Roddy Collins? Well, we've teamed up with Penguin Ireland to celebrate the release of Roddy's new autobiography. It's called The Rodfather. And we're hosting a special night at the Sugar Club in Dublin on Thursday, October the 13th. Richie McCormack's going to be joined on the night by the Rodfather himself, the boat's ghostwriter Paul Howard, and some very special guests. It promises to be a cracking night, so check out sugarclub.com for tickets. It does promise to be a sensational night. Now, we're turning our attention to the growing, unfortunate, consistent issue of referee abuse in the GAA. And I'm delighted to say we've got the Wexford GAA County Chairperson, Micheál Martin, to talk about the topic. Good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger. Thank you.
Look, unfortunately, we're talking to you guys because you've had some high-profile incidents in recent times. But I'm interested in the proactive response that you've decided to take to this. Can you talk to us first off about what you are doing on a practical level just to try and raise the issue so that it's not something that you're carrying the can for, but that it's actually something you can be in a leadership position for?
Yeah, listen, I suppose it's well documented at this stage that we've had particularly one high-profile incident, but this is an area that we have actually had on the agenda of every board meeting, both executive and full county board meeting this year, primarily because of the recruitment issue. I suppose to tackle that, we had come up with a number of initiatives that we thought were maybe making progress, but then obviously when the incidents, when some of these incidents came to light, I suppose we met last Tuesday night with our referees, and within that meeting we feel that a huge number of positive initiatives came out of it. Primarily, and I suppose I would be really proud in the first instance of the reaction of our clubs. We I suppose gave 1 week for the clubs to hold a workshop, and I think tomorrow night is the last night for that to be held. I think 70% of the clubs have held theirs already, and we will have over 1,000 mentors that will have sat in a room to self-evaluate the current, say, sideline behaviour and attitude towards referees within each club. I think that's the key piece. That, you know, first of all, we've all acknowledged that there is an issue. There's an issue in our county, and I think it's across counties, it's across codes. We're all aware of it at this stage. I think I referenced it previously as a societal issue, and I think it is, but it's an issue that we do have to deal with. So that's the first instance in terms of those workshops, and there's been a very positive reaction, both from club officials, from mentors, and parents.
Can we just tease out those workshops, because that's interesting, right? Like the self-evaluation bit is something that not everybody's very good at, right? It's you're asking people, is your behaviour acceptable? You're asking us to ask ourselves, is our behaviour acceptable? And like, how do you encourage that? How do you? Because I suppose one of the things here is that you would hope that a club will turn round to one of their mentors who is going is crossing the line, or to a parent crossing the line. But like, we've had this conversation before, you don't know who you're standing beside, and you don't know how angry people are, you don't know what's going on in their lives, you don't know whether or not they're likely to hit you. So a lot of people don't have the capacity to turn around to a parent or a mentor of a team and say, hang on a second, stop that's not acceptable.
Yeah, listen, I suppose we ultimately, as a club, the club has to take responsibility for who they appoint on to coach teams, and then once that responsibility is given to a coach, the coach has to be advised, mentored in terms of what is and what isn't acceptable. And that, I suppose, in terms of the workshop, and we would have given the guidance a very specific, simple but guidance in terms of what way we wanted the workshop to run, So, for example, we broke down every category from parents, supporters, players, mentors, a simple rating scale. We want you to rate your current behaviour from 1 to 10. And we gave some parameters within that in terms of, some examples of what, say, misbehaviour would have looked like. And then under each heading, we're seeking an action to improve that. Now, we are aware, and I think it's really important, and I've said this since, that we don't want to tarnish everybody with a brush that there's misbehaviour on the sideline. There's a lot of positive behaviour, and the vast majority of volunteers across our county, across the country, go out and do wonderful work every weekend or every evening. But there are a small number of instances, and particularly at this stage of the year, I think when we get in a GA context, we're getting towards the knockout stages, where the prize is that little bit bigger, and the issues probably manifest themselves even more at underage level, to be honest. That, as I say, it's now time to hold up a mirror for the clubs to hold up a mirror to look at, is our behaviour acceptable? And the response we've got has been honestly really, really good. And I don't know if you saw social media this morning, you see some pictures of the club workshops. They've been really, really well attended. I've spoken to a number of club chairpersons, and they've said there's been really, really good engagement, because I think there's a widespread acknowledgement that there are issues.
It's certainly great, Micheál, to see the I guess participation in these workshops. That's definitely a good sign and probably the first step forward. The only thing that would concern me, I guess, from the surveys, I guess a lot of people filling out these surveys, you know, when they're being asked to rate themselves from 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, when you're filling out those surveys, you're sitting at home, you're not feeling nice and calm. I guess at the games then, tempers flare and people react in the moment to things happening that piss them off. And as Ger says, we don't know the background stories of a lot of these people. Like, is it your concern that maybe something needs to be done at a higher level, whether it's the top of the GEA, whether it's government, that there have to be serious repercussions for people? I don't know if it's naming and shaming or what it might be, but that there has to be an extra element to this to really clamp down on it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, listen, this we would have acknowledged that this is the first step of the process that we've taken. I suppose we had some other recommendations arising out of our meeting last week, and I've been contacted by a huge number of people. We're actually going to participate in a piece of research with a researcher from UCD in relation to how we can make long-lasting change on this. And already the various phases, and even in the last week, as I say, we've engaged, broken down what a possible research project might look like in terms of making long-lasting behaviour. And we all recognise, and myself included, in the heat of battle, people are going to get excited and what have you, but there's a certain level of behaviours that are unacceptable. So we need to outline those behaviours and then address this and make people aware that these are the sanctions. And I think we've already, I suppose we would be proposing and have proposed a special Congress, because this is a matter of urgency now, where the line is crossed, that the sanctions must be more stringent than they are at the moment. Our hands are tied at the moment in terms of the maximum limit of within the GAA, and we will be very strongly stating that maximum limit should be removed, and that it will be then at the discretion of the committee to implement a ban that may be more appropriate. So
bringing in lifetime bans, in a way, it's symbolic as much as anything. We were just talking about it earlier on in the office. Like, how do you actually police a lifetime ban? You don't need to flash an identity card to get into Croke Park for a match. But the fact that a whole community would know that somebody had transgressed to the point where the entire organisation says, you are shunned, you should not be allowed, we don't trust you to be involved in our organisation anymore. It's the symbolism of that as much as anything, rather than the actual day-to-day enforcement of it.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that, Ger. And remember, I suppose, again, in a GA context, the GA crosses every community. So generally, and I suppose Ireland is a small place, but within each community and within each county, it's a small place as well. Where someone transgresses to the point that a lifetime ban is deserved, I think that'll be easily enough implemented, being honest. Yeah.
Can I just ask you one thing? And this is a bit of a tangent, but we saw TG Carr mic'd up a referee, and I firmly believe that one of the reasons why the respect that rugby referees get and even American football referees get is that you can largely hear what's being said to them at some stage. It becomes public. In soccer, you can't. And in soccer, you can see the referee getting abuse. And in GA, you can see the referee getting abuse. I think that would stop if we could hear what was being said. I think players would be shamed into not saying the stuff that they want to say. They'd bite their tongue and tempers would calm if that was made public. There would be a period of maybe 6 months where stuff was being said that shouldn't be said, but it would, in much the same way that Ireland's a small community, people would be like, oh geez, I shouldn't have said that, I'm really sorry. Is there an element here where we could look at something else which is a bit left field into helping to be part of the solution to this issue?
Yeah, I think so. I think absolutely. I think I think it's got to the stage where we need a complete review of our approach to refereeing. We need a complete review of the rule book, because it's too convoluted. I mean, the playing rules of Gaelic football runs to about 64 pages. I see David Goff quoted at the weekend in relation to the simplification of the actual rules. And we even had an incident at the weekend at the end of one of our games where I know there was a kind of a general debate on what the actual rule was. Listen, if players and even if officials can differ in their opinion on a rule, well, then the rule is too complicated. I was talking to Pat Daly on this, and I think his mantra was rules should be easy to read, easy to remember, and easy to apply. I think our playing rules at the moment probably aren't that, and need to be simplified. There's more people playing our games now than ever before, particularly at underage with the advent of GPOs and with Go games. But that means that there's people who probably don't have a level of understanding of the rules are following our games. So I suppose to get to your point in relation to anything then that can help in the communication of that, be it the player mic or whatever other aspect, is something that should be at least explored and trialled and piloted. And I think we'd all acknowledge now we need to do more.
You mentioned, Micheál, the word recruitment there from the outset, and that's something that we've a number of weeks ago, I think when it was the incident in Roscommon, we spoke to David Goff and to Martin McNally, two referees at intercounty level, about that. Maurice Deegan as well quoted in the newspapers today talking about the fact that there's all this talk of the need for two referees on the pitch at the same time, but counties and clubs are struggling to get even one referee on the pitch. Like within your own county of Wexford, is that an issue, that area of recruitment, and negative stories like this cropping up is hardly going to make the issue of recruitment and bringing in new referees any easier?
Yeah, and that's why we've had it on the agenda. I mean, we recognise, at least 12 months ago, we recognised that we had a problem with recruitment referees, and we've gone from almost 70 to just over 50. Probably less than 50 active referees, and there have been now not a huge amount of games, but there have been a number of games that haven't been able to go ahead because the sheer volume of matches at the weekend, we would have referees doubling up. So it's an obvious one, but without referees we don't have games. So the recruitment process is something that we have been actively looking at. No, we've had a couple of successes. I mean, the referee for our senior hurling this year, Eamon Furlong, recently retired player, probably would have had a reputation on the field as someone who would have been, robust and would have known some of the dark arts maybe. But he has, in a short number of years, then has become a referee and refereed our senior hurling final to a really, really high level. And he's just an example. And I suppose, again, just to emphasise how great a reaction we've had this week in Wexford. He's been in a number of local schools in his area, was invited in to talk about respect for referee, to talk about the rules of the game. So it's that type of process that we're looking to generate now in terms of when we left the room with the referees last Tuesday night, we did say this can be a watershed moment in our county in relation to we have to change attitude. We need more referees, but the whole thing is part of a process. And unless we start that process and start it quick, we won't be recruiting new referees. We'll be losing the referees that we have.
There's a point here from Colin McKnight, which I was just about to make myself in the comments. County boards and teams need to stop getting their players who've been sent off on technicalities. Obvious red cards are being contested, and this needs to stop. It's true, really, isn't it, that actually the system of governance, refereeing, is actually under attack, basically from all sides, from supporters, management, even the administration, when it comes to, sure, look, we'll try and get you off, and if we have to go to the DRA, we'll go to the DRA. And generally the DRA are like, look, lads, if the rule book isn't 100% nailed down, and how can it be 100% nailed down, then there's probably a technicality that you can get off anybody on at some level. That is a big issue. Our culture is to try and get off. It's to repent at the last minute and get into heaven.
Well, again, we would be recommending that the disciplinary process within the GA is completely overhauled and reviewed, and we've made that recommendation. Actually, within the county, and our referees, I think, took some solace from it last week. We've had 188 red cards in our county championships this year, which there's a huge number of games, but quite a high level of, say, red cards. There's only been 8 hearings. So only 8 of those red cards have sought a hearing, didn't accept the card, let's say, and only 2 of those have been overturned. And I think one was proven to be a mistaken identity. So within the county, we were quite comfortable with that. But to take your point, yeah, listen, there has been a number of high profile cases during the year, and they ultimately undermine the whole process. For disciplinary process. So there's some feedback on the line, Ger.
No worries. Go on.
Sorry, cut across you, Micheál. The issue probably is bigger at the club level because, needless to say, you can hear the abuse quite more obviously at matches at club level compared to, say, in Croke Park, where there's a full stand and it's quite difficult for referees and players to hear this abuse. But even from your GA supporters hat, like as someone who probably attends a lot of games yourself, over the last 3, 4, 5 years, have you noticed an increase in, when you're in stands yourself as a fan or as someone just there to watch a game, have you noticed maybe a bit of an increase in terms of abuse hurled at referees?
I think during COVID we didn't have crowds, and as we emerged from COVID with smaller crowds, I think everyone appreciated more the value of our games. But certainly since I think this year, only the Tuesday night before we had a particular incident, we would have spoken at a county board meeting about the level of unacceptable behaviour, particularly at underage matches. I think it manifests itself more at underage matches, particularly at this time of the year. So, say for example, we're now at semi-final, final stage of our underage games. One of the proposals that we've had was to mark out boxes at every ground, and that the mentors must stay in that. Now, we have that in our main stadiums and we have it at our high profile games, but you can't be having underage matches where mentors are 10, 15 yards in on the line, directing players, potentially then engaging with a referee. That's probably a growing phenomenon, and it's something that, again, from talking, I've spoken to a number of chairpersons and even other codes, that it's an issue. So and there has been a number of initiatives to try and address this, such as Silent Sideline and so on. But it's a culture change we need, and I would have said this last week. I think Sport Ireland probably need to take the lead on it in terms of bringing the NGBs together, and the policymakers need to develop an overarching protocol to address sideline behaviour.
I think that's right, and I think that it was interesting that the Houses of the Oireachtas held a hearing on this and came out with all their good ideas, but no one actually followed through to say, so hate crime legislation is being introduced at the moment. Can we have a special statute on the books where if you assault a referee in any sport, that actually there's a higher punitive rate to that, because it's like somebody who more than likely you're sucker punching, as we've seen. It's I don't know, maybe that's taking this too far, but Micheál, it's really interesting. You've got a practical, evidence-based approach to a problem that's nationwide, and I really hope that very interested to hear a bit more about that research you're doing at UCD, and we wish you all the best with it, because it absolutely needs to be fixed, and it's great to see you're putting so much effort into it. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
It's Micheál Martin there, the County Board Chairman of Wexford GAA. If you want to get in touch, 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Those boxes for mentors on the sideline, that's a good idea, because no matter what age group you're at the moment, you can see the mentors down in the corners. Yeah,
constantly straying onto the pitch.
Telling the players what to do. How are they going to become good decision makers if you're stand there, do that? You're like, what?
But it's funny how things like that sound so obvious, and even the thing you suggested about miking up referees sounds so obvious when you hear it, but until you actually implement it, it's
miking up referees. Immediately, everybody was, after the TG Car game, was like, oh, that's really interesting. You can hear he's explaining the rule that he's given the foul on. Yeah. So all of a sudden, those fouls become, it's like in American football. Everybody knows roughing the passer, because the guy comes out and goes, roughing the passer, and they're like, oh yeah, it was roughing the passer. Yeah. Do
and I think you talk about how it might take 6 months or whatever for players to cop on to the fact that referees are mic'd up. I actually think it'd be quicker than that. I think players would cop on pretty quickly to the fact that referees are mic'd.
I'm giving everybody a bit of generosity
here, but
you can't do it, because the players might say something that would have an impact on their job. The players are amateur, and so therefore, but that's nonsense.
They can't be protected or sheltered because
I'm allowed to abuse you because I'm an amateur. I can say what I want to you because I'm an amateur.
It doesn't have any legs, really.
Right. We fixed it. 8:55. If you want to get in touch, as I said, leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Now, Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury. Is it going to happen? Who knows? I mean, we all desperately want it to happen. One man who, though, might have a better idea is the legendary boxing promoter Barry Hearn, who joins us on the line now. Barry, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning to you. I'm very well, and thanks for the legendary, but legendary and old would probably be appropriate.
No, you're as young as you feel, right?
I'll take you on that one. Thank you.
Here, listen. No one's listening live right now. Is this fight going to happen or not? What do you think?
Listen, I'm very cynical about boxing and some of the comments made by everybody, and I think it's extremely unlikely because of the personalities involved, the egos involved, etc. I'm sure it'll happen one day. But, you know, I'm not involved in the negotiations. Let me say that straight away. My son looked after boxing. I'm supposed to be retired. I'm not really good at it, so I'm still sticking my nose in on occasions. But for the moment, I think we can only sit and hope. But I can't see it happening this December. We're in October already, and the camps should have started already if they were both serious.
Are you cynical about the fact that Fury just likes to keep this on the line, and it's a great carrot, and it puts him in the media?
Yeah. I mean, look, the fact of life is Anthony Joshua getting a fight with Tyson Fury is a good result for Anthony Joshua. He's just coming off another loss. You know, where is he up in his career? He had a meltdown at the press conference, psychologically, mentally. If I was Tyson Fury, I would want to fight Anthony Joshua now, before he gets back to the normal Anthony Joshua, so to speak. Fury seems, I don't know, he's so difficult to work out because 1 minute he's retired and everyone's a dosser. The second minute he will come back for £500 million. The third time he says, I want to fight, but it has to be for free. And then he says, I want to fight Anthony Joshua in December. So, you know, it's almost take your pick with Fury. It looks a little bit like I haven't been in the papers this week, so maybe I'd like to say something that'll get me a headline. I may be being cynical. I want to see the fight. I know Joshua wants it because, hey, 60-40 to Fury is a good deal for Joshua in the current market. That may change in times ahead, but the one thing I know is that, you know, rather than what else is Anthony Joshua going to do? You know, he's going to box. If he's going to box on, he's got to fight Tyson Fury one day. But to fight Tyson Fury, it means Tyson Fury's got to be serious. I think they've sent a contract. I know our Matchroom boys have gone back with comments on that contract, and we haven't heard anything else. And the contract they sent, I think, was pretty unacceptable, as you'd expect. So it's a long way off yet.
Who has more to lose here, Barry? Because I mean, Tyson Fury is for most people and pugilists out there, he's the favourite, no doubt, heading into the fight if it does happen. But who has more to lose?
I think Tyson Fury's got more to lose because he's got the belts and Anthony Joshua hasn't. A defeat by Tyson Fury would definitely take Anthony Joshua closer to retirement. So he's got a whole career to lose. Why it's such a fascinating fight is because they've both got a lot on the line. And look, Tyson Fury is the favourite, no question. Anthony Joshua has lost, 3 of his last 5. He's in a no-lose position in Bahrain. He's still 33. He's a young man. He's made a shed load of money. Does he really want to get hit in the face for the rest of his life? I don't know. Fighters are strange people. They're not like you and I. We couldn't do their job in a million years. So it makes me ease up on them and not be too critical because of the pressure they go through. I think they've both got a lot to lose. I think Tyson Fury marginally has got more to lose because he's the one holding the belts.
I buy that, right? The only thing I'd say is that from Fury's perspective, he could fight Usyk and that would be a great defining moment for heavyweight boxing. But there can't be that many other fights that Tyson Fury is very excited about at this stage of his career, given everything he's achieved.
It depends on your perspective of life, and you know, we're fans, aren't we? So we want to see unified. We're like football fans. We don't care how much money the club spends. They could be bankrupt as long as we win something. So fight fans are similar. We want to see any fight we want to see the fight and we want to see it now because we're the fans. But they don't make the decisions. The fighters and their advisors make the decisions. They get turned on by a lot of things. Belts is one. Money is right up there. Try not to forget about money. It's actually what boxing's all about. So whether he's fighting Tyson Fury or Alexander Usyk, Joshua's looking at how much money is he going to make in the same way as Tyson Fury was to maximise his earnings. So there are lots of great opponents out there. Joe Joyce had a great win the other day. I mean, I thought against the New Zealand Joe Parker, there's obviously Dubois is another one. There's a couple of American heavyweights coming through. So you're always going to find talent that wants the challenge for one of the greatest prizes in sport, which is the heavyweight title. Yes, the big fights, they are what they are. It's Usyk who is absolutely... I can't believe how good Usyk is. He's an amazing fighter. You've got Tyson Fury, who is so difficult to hit, it's not true, and he's a real good boxing brain. You've got Anthony Joshua, who punches harder than anyone else in the division by some far, but you've got to throw punches and land them to make that count. Yeah, but you've still got lots of other people to put in the mix. Dillian White's out there. Goodness me, Chisora's still there knocking on the door. So we're going to be entertained royally coming over, but I'm not sure what order the fights are going to come at.
This gamesmanship, Barry, and dancing around contracts, like it annoys a lot of people, but it's also entertaining in some aspects to watch. Is it as bad now as it has ever been, or back in the 80s and 90s in the boxing world was it equally as bad?
I think it's much worse today than it was in my day. I mean, in my day there was, if we look at Ben Eubank and things like that, there was genuine hate, and it was a real proper on the street fight. And the contract was the contract because the real thing they want to do is get in and knock each other's head off. Today is much more of a business today. I don't know how many advisors all these fighters have got, but there's lots and lots of them charging them enormous fees. So we've got to get used to it. I mean, that's a way of life. The devil is in the detail, as they say, and sometimes you don't get past the detail to meet the devil.
That's the key, isn't it? The advisors are all getting paid. The lawyers have to get their money. The accountants, the financial advisors.
Everybody gets paid, including the tax man, by the way, and the government, and and of course these guys are not earning, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, $100,000. They're on millions. Put that in your head, they're on millions. And they make a mistake or someone doesn't get that one clause in the contract that the fighter wants, they're out, So there's pressure at every level, So I understand. Sport has changed in your lifetime. Sport has changed enormously in my lifetime.
I'm sure.
It's much more money orientated than it's ever been. And, in the old days, the fighters didn't, they wandered in, they signed a contract, they walked, Today they've got proper advice, and in a dangerous sport, I welcome that, I think it's good that they're getting that type of money. But it doesn't come without a price. There's no such thing as a free lunch. And, we want the very best entertainment we can see. As a fan, we're very picky. We've changed. We're not a soft touch anymore. We've got an opinion. So the whole world's changed. So don't blame fighters, don't blame fans. Just get on with it and say, this is what the world looks like, and hopefully one day we will see everything we want to see. And the good news is, at the end of the day, money does talk. One
question about the weekend. The Ben Eubank thing, where did the idea for that fight come from? Was that always...
It came 32 years ago when I saw one of the greatest fights I've ever seen, which was Ben Eubank won. And then it came again 3 years afterwards when they got together at Old Trafford and it was a draw. And then all I could think about for 30 years was what's it going to be like when we do Ben Eubank 3? But again, for one reason or the other, as we've already said, some fights don't happen. And Ben Eubank 3 didn't happen. And all of a sudden it's been dished up in the most marvellous form of two great young men. And this fight could be the same type of classic as Ben Eubank 1, and I can't wait for Saturday.
Why did the third one not happen?
Well, again, advisors, as you like. Eubank stayed with me, and we eventually moved from ITV to Sky. And Nigel Benn went with Don King and Frank Warren, and that was the end of that.
Sorry, Barry. I remember you telling me, it could have been in your book, in fact, where I read that the first time you met Chris Eubank, wasn't it the sheer confidence of him walking into an office or something along those lines?
It was at the Snooker World Championships, and I was in Sheffield, and he asked to meet me. He was a young pro, had 8 fights, 8 wins, and walked into the Grosvenor House, and he said, "Good morning, Mr. Hearn. My name is Christopher Livingston Eubank. I'm an athlete and I know my worth." And I thought, I love this guy. That's brilliant. And that's how we got together, really.
Are you surprised by Chris Senior's objection? I think the latest, in terms of his opinion of this fight this weekend, is calling for a boycott. I know Chris Jr. and Ben Jr., different weight classes. Is that something that surprises you?
Not really. I mean, Eubank is a deep thinker. I mean, sometimes an eccentric thinker, and sometimes he works on different rules than most of us. You know, he likes to be the boss in his house, but his son is 33 years old, and he wants this fight, and he wants to earn a great deal of money as well. I understand that, and also Eubank Jr. is the favourite. He's a much bigger man, but Chris, you can understand. You know, he was involved in a tragedy fight with Michael Watson, which resulted in Michael getting terrible injuries. And because this is a weight that suits Conor Ben rather than Chris Eubank Jr., he's naturally concerned for his son. I can understand that. I think it's a concern a lot of parents would have.
Barry, is this one of the other big changes in boxing? Maybe this was the case where you could have these fights at make weights that really captured the public's imagination, but that wasn't connected directly to a belt.
Yeah, I think belts, to be honest with you, maybe I'm getting old. I think belts are losing significance, really. I think punters want to see the fight they want to see. And the fact that he's dead, someone's draped around with jewellery, that each piece of jewellery costs a huge sanction fee to a body that I'm not sure they do anything, I think sometimes makes me feel it's a bit of a waste of money. I'm interested in the fight. And quite honestly, you know, this fight that Saturday, if it was for a belt, we wouldn't see the fight because they wouldn't, you know, there would be weight restrictions for a fight. You know, they couldn't happen. So this is an example where we're seeing a fight that the public have demanded and want to see and sold out in about a minute. We're seeing it without a belt being on the line, and that's an interesting one for me, as whether that's the beginning of a new wave of boxing where you match personalities rather than weights.
We've been kind of, Barry, going back and forth in this country waiting for a Katie Taylor fight in Dublin, in Croke Park, the National Stadium, and I know that's something that she has high up on her agenda, and for different reasons it hasn't happened here as of yet, but can you foresee that happening at some point in the future, that Katie might get her long-awaited fight over here?
I can't tell you how much I'd love to see that. It is impossible. I mean, Katie Taylor is an athlete where the whole country is and should be, quite rightly, very proud of her. She's a very, very special person and deserves that homecoming fight. I mean, look, she's still fit, strong, keen as mustard, tough as teak. But there's going to come a time, and I don't want that time to come before she's had her Croker Park homecoming with the memories that will create for generations. So, yes, I would love to see that.
Was the main reason that it didn't happen because you couldn't really run boxing in Ireland?
Of course.
But that seems to have changed now. That
I know. And there's no reason why not to do the fight. I mean, there was a time when boxing wasn't looked in the same spirit in Ireland. Today it is. There's no problems with that at all, and we had no problems going to Ireland at all. It's the right fight and the right, you need a showcase fight, and the amount I think had Amanda Serrano agreed to the rematch. The reason she didn't agree to the rematch was she didn't want it in Croker Park, which I found bizarre because it would be a phenomenal atmosphere for both girls. But that may come round again, and when it does, I'm getting my ticket.
You've seen a lot of fighters come and go, Barry, over the decades. But where does Katie rank in terms of the fighters you've seen?
Well, in terms of the fighters I've seen, she's obviously the best woman fighter I've ever seen in my life by a country mile. I don't consider her a woman fighter. I consider her a fighter because that's what she set out to achieve. In terms of a person, The only thing I could say is if I had another daughter, I would wish it was Katie Taylor.
Good stuff. Who's going to win the Ben Eubank fight at the weekend, Barry?
Tough call. I'm really sitting on the fence on this. Early doors, Eubank's big favourite. If it goes past 6 rounds, Conor comes into it, I think. So, toss of a coin. It's the old days, mate. If Eubank Ben 3, don't miss it.
Hey, can I just ask you one, Barry, before I let you go? There was a little bit of controversy in the snooker world last month. I think Ronnie O'Sullivan brought the issue up, and it's kind of come to the fore with the mixed doubles happening of late as well. Ronnie was talking about taking 5% off the prize money and giving the female players a good opportunity to play in good conditions. I think Judd Trump bounced back and said Ronnie should put his money where his mouth is. What's your take on that in terms of levelling the playing scale and the pay scale, I guess, in terms of the gender divide in snooker?
Very straightforward. Snooker is a gender-neutral game. The women play for the same prize money as the men, and they take their chances the same as the men. Anything less than that is patronising towards women, right? Now, the amateur game, the governing body, by all means, they can do whatever they want to give these girls some more events or whatever. That doesn't come under the current professional game remit. The World Championships is not part of World Snooker. It's part of the WPBSA, which is the governing body of the game. They can do what they like and they can help the women as much as they can. But in sport, as in life, it's a meritocracy. You've got to play to the highest level. You've got to take your chances on a level playing field. If you want to be treated with respect and on equal terms, then you've got to be playing on the level playing field. No advantages for anybody, and something which I would like to see the grassroots get more involved with, helping all sports, men and women. The great thing about sport is its diversity, and we wouldn't want to change that. But at the same time, you can't be patronising and just pick out a section of sport and give that special treatment.
Sorry, Barry, before we finish up, it just struck me there when you're talking about the Ben Eubank fight and trying to set all that up decades ago, kind of a bit of back and forth between your son Eddie and Bob Arum over recent weeks, understandably, when they're trying to get the I's dotted and the T's crossed. But some similarities, I guess, between yourself and Don King's relationship back in the day?
Yeah, well, listen, sport's a soap opera, isn't it? I mean, where would we be without the characters, Eddie Hearn, my son, who I'm obviously, as a father, I'm very proud of him. I would say he's probably, third or fourth biggest personality in the world of boxing, and he's never had a professional fight in his life. It's all about characters, all about personalities. Eddie's a personality and a character. Bob Arum, bless him, he's 91. The man's a legend. I mean, I'm 74. I have a bit of a struggle getting up in the morning sometimes, So hats off to everybody. Sit back and be entertained. Don't take it all too seriously. Don't get personal about it. Just enjoy the fact that we're watching sport at the highest level. We have to put up with some rubbish to get there, but we'll get there in the end.
Barry, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Pleasure, boy. Pleasure. Bye-bye.
It's Barry Hearn there, giving us some thoughts on the world of boxing.
Always interesting. Katie Taylor as the daughter he never had.
There you go.
You'd love to see the Katie Taylor Croke Park fight. I mean, she's spoken about it all the time. I think after her fights now, 21, 22 professional fights, and
kind of now or never, isn't it?
Yeah, that's her. That would just put it would cap her career, really, wouldn't it? That's the peak of your career. Obviously, winning London 2012 gold medal, having an unblemished professional record is up there, but fighting in Croke Park in front of...
look, headlining MSG and winning all the money because it's a job, and it's the boxers, if everybody in Ireland could buy a ticket to help her, I think everybody would. So right, OTB AM brought to you live each morning with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio today. OTB Gold at 1 o'clock is Nigel Mansell. There's a Dadcast from 3. A career retrospective is Packie Bonner at 4. And OTB Gold, speaking of boxing, is Ray Boom Boom Mancini from 6. You can follow OTB across our social channels and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for all the best in latest sports content. We're back after these with the sports pages and the sports news from Cathal. First, though, here is wild speculation about how many goals Erling Haaland will score from the news round last night with Joe, Mick and Richie.
Guardiola's not going to play him in every game. He might get an injury here and there.
I would just say he does have a month off during the World Cup.
Yeah.
Train like Ivan Drago.
He's going to go and he'll take a week off, put his feet up, get some sun, come back and do a fresh pre-season, and all the others arrive home with a World Cup hangover, and he's like, I'm raring to go. So
But he just feels like the Villa game a couple of weeks ago, City were poor in that game, right? And he didn't play well. He wasn't really part of the game. But he got a chance and he scored.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's going to happen 9 times out of 10. And then 4 or 5 times out of those 10 games, he's going to have a day like yesterday, where he gets 2 or 3 or 4.
Would you? He'll score another 2 hat-tricks minimum this Premier League season.
Yeah.
So I think the line could be 40. Like, so Salah
as an over-under, I think he'll get 40.
Is the line 45? You know, to make you really,
yeah, something will happen. It's not going to be like this.
40.
It's not going to be September football forever. There's going to be like.
You can be a perfect season. Messi and Ronaldo had those freak years in La Liga.
That's true as well.
What would
only one. Looking at the lines here, only one person has done 30 in the last 14 years, and that was Suarez. No, it was Suarez in 2014.
Oh no, Salah has the record, Rich. I think Salah had 32 in 18.
Okay.
I think I googled it yesterday, talking to Kenny Cunningham. I'll double check that. I think Salah has the record 32, and Andy Cole has said 34. So I don't know. I'd say you put the over-under line at 40 for him now.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be 8 goals better than Salah was, as good as Salah was that year, because this is just.
Well, if again, barring injuries, are like, it's just hard to see how not. It's hard in a performance like yesterday, which isn't a one-off. He doesn't even have to play that well to get a goal or 2 in a game, and that's going to be the difference, I think. No. 40 goals, Jesus.
It's all we have left in this league that's of intrigue.
There's a texter saying something similar, like for all the excitement of it now, season's going to be over in a couple of weeks, but
by March.
Like Arsenal are going to, like, as exciting as it is, Arsenal aren't going to challenge Manchester City this season.
No.
In May.
No.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Off the ball.
The best way to view Rodney Parade is in your rear view mirror as you're driving out of the place. Like it's got no atmosphere. It's a horrific, with a quarter full, it's a horrific joint. I've been there with the Waratahs, Leinster and Ulster, and when it's full, it's a great joint. Wow, dreary Sunday afternoon with no one in the place.
Off the ball. Weekdays from 7 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He says bullshit.
No, Eamon, come on, don't be, no, I'm not,
yes.
No.
Back page of the Irish Independent this morning, and they're leading with Cristiano Ronaldo. Might be leaving Manchester United in January. What a surprise. It says Manchester United are ready to let him go if anybody will just offer them a handful of magic beans. Stockdale is now a doubt for the autumn series with ankle injury. This is devastating news for Jacob Stockdale, the other ankle that he... So he was out for a year with an injured ankle, and the other ankle is now injured against Leinster last Friday. Fingers crossed it's not as serious. Clubs must be made accountable to protect referees. This is Maurice Deegan talking about the fact that you've got to hold the clubs and the county boards accountable, but it's the clubs who need to be punished as well as the individuals. Front page of the Examiner. Watch your house. Klopp admits leaky Liverpool may need to change defensive approach. Kieran Shannon has a great piece about Brian Mullen's influence beyond Dublin. He says that he did an interview with Larry Tompkins 10 years ago where Tompkins said that Mullins was the player who influenced him the most. They'd played together in the 1985 Railway Cup team. Mullins hadn't been picked. Pardon me. My goodness. Mullins hadn't been picked. Bobby Miller was the coach.
Yeah, well, the amount of players that have been inspired by Brian Mullins, this is what makes me sad as well. It only comes out when someone dies. Yeah. It's like, well, most of the stories only come out when someone dies. You're like, Jesus, he was a towering figure back in the day. And obviously, I've said it before, he was before my time in terms of playing, but when you watch videos back and you see the sheer breadth of his shoulders was the thing that stood out for me, and look, his feeling in the air was unbelievable as well. But Larry Tompkins was obviously a massive fan.
Yeah, so specifically what happened was Tompkins was obviously with Kildare because he's from Kildare. Did everybody know that Larry Tompkins played for Kildare before he won the All-Irelands for Cork? Did everybody know that? Is that part of the story? Anyway, Mullins didn't get picked by Bobby Miller, and they organised a friendly against Dublin, a challenge to get ready, and Mullins was absolutely outstanding. So Bobby Miller says, would you mind coming and playing for us? And he's like, yeah, if you make me captain.
Right.
If you make me captain. Because he hadn't won one and he really wanted to win one. So he came in and like in training was like bawling everybody out of it. And before the final, he went around in the Ashling Hotel and told everybody what their job was. And to Tompkins, it was kick the ball over the bar. I'll do all the ploughing for you. You kick it over the bar.
Jesus.
And then they won. There was also a bit of, don't worry about Jack O'Shea, I'll take care of him. And lo and behold, he did. Ends up man of the match and his first Railway Cup medal in his in the last ever Railway Cup match played in Croker. Anyway, later that evening, Tompkins was sitting beside Jack Boothman at a victory banquet when Mullins came over to them and plonked the cup on the table. I don't want to rub it in your faces, but you don't win too many of these. Take it away. And Tompkins did. And then obviously, Larry went on to win plenty in his life.
He did all right.
Just not with the right team.
Yeah, in the red as opposed to the white. Just what an impact he had on the game, Brian Mullins. And his son Nathan, who obviously, of course, went on to play for Donegal, wrote a lovely piece on social media as well, paying tribute to his dad and the impact that he had in his own life. So that was really emotional to read that. But what a man Brian Mullins was.
It's fight night is the back of the Daily Mail. Klopp is wary of Euro threat from Rangers. Leicester beat Nottingham Forest. We didn't even talk about this last night. The tendency is that the sacking happens just after we're off air. So if the Nottingham Forest manager Steve Cooper can just make it to 11 o'clock today, he should be grand. New Ireland blow as Zoo is ruled out of playoff. We already talked about the Jess Zoo not being in the team because of injury, and just really hoping that it's not a significant knee injury. Can we fix it? Yes, we can. It's the back of the Daily Star, and it's Klopp the builder. Klopp will build Cop back up. Gers can defy the odds as Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, and Donaghy slams Rozzy rumours.
Who are Irish Manchester United fans supporting tonight? Probably Liverpool. Hardly be on the fence.
No, you
might be on the fence.
Not really. You want Rangers to beat Liverpool.
I think a lot of the Irish United fans would want Liverpool to beat Rangers.
No,
I think there was a split there. I think there was a divide. Myself and my mates were talking about this, and the United mates, and they're all kind of down the middle. Some saying, you don't want Liverpool to win, and some saying, well, you don't want Rangers necessarily to win either. So
you want Rangers to win but not go through in the group. It's like that's the worst.
Yeah. So everyone's a winner then.
Carl Mullaney's with us. Carl, how are you?
Good morning, lads. How's it going?
Can you weigh in on who do you want? What's football team are you allowed to tell us? Are you Liverpool?
So I want Liverpool to win.
It was an easy decision for you. Phil Egan outside kind of agreed with me. He said, a lot of United fans he knows will be on the Liverpool bandwagon tonight. Maybe you just don't watch it.
Just a draw.
Yeah, just a draw. Yeah, it's one of those. It'll be a decent game. Liverpool have a lot to prove.
Liverpool are under a bit of pressure.
Yeah, all of a sudden.
Rangers were good at the weekend by all accounts against Hearts to beat them 4-0, so they've got to get something tonight as well, don't they?
Lads, we want a title race. It's just not going to happen though, unfortunately, in the Premier League. Alan's going to ruin all of our March, April and Mays. We're used to kind of building up and waiting for the last few games of the season, but I feel like unless Arsenal can push on, which feels unlikely, they're always going to do an Arsenal, then it's going to be the typical end to a season.
Back page of the Mirror. Don't be blue, none. Jurgen Klopp and his right-hand man Pep Linders have had private talks with Darwin Núñez because he's struggling at the moment. Do you get the reference?
He's getting compared to Andy Carroll, isn't he? As in the headline.
Don't be blue, none.
Don't be
do you get the reference? You do?
No, actually.
No.
Blue as in...
Blue none.
Oh, no, I thought he was like sad or something.
No, obviously blues in reference to Rangers, but what is the actual deeper meaning?
Blue
here?
Nun. You've never heard of Blue Nun?
No.
It's cheap white wine.
There you go.
See, yeah.
I'm going to check this up. Alan Partridge's favourite, I'm reliably informed.
Right.
The mark of sophistication. A German white wine that obviously was one of the two wines you could get in Ireland in the 80s, and obviously in England.
See, I'm a stout man, Ger, so the reference would have gone way over my head.
You would have seen it in the supermarkets, no?
Colum's asked me in my ears, I watch Partridge. I wouldn't have been one of those religious Partridge watchers.
Leave from
clips.
Yeah, the clips are good.
Yeah, the clips are good. The clips stand the test of time.
Yeah.
Blue Nun, sorry, Jerry. No, I totally didn't get the reference. I thought it was going to be a reference that aged myself and Cathal as perhaps a generation below you, but no, it was just an alcohol reference. So
yeah, there you go.
We're all okay.
Noisy neighbours, United half-time rants rock Etihad. A furious half-time rant from Bruno Fernandes and Lisandro Martinez at the Manchester derby. It was so loud it could be heard down the corridor. Men,
that's what you
men
know.
at half time shouting in a dressing room. It's very bad.
Who does that?
Yeah.
Hey, it worked. They got 3 goals in the second half.
Yeah, they won the second half, you know.
There you go.
What a result. What's going on in the world, Cathal?
Well, you mentioned Leicester. They're off the bottom of the Premier League table. They were impressive last night. 4-0 winners over Nottingham Forest at the King Power Stadium. James Maddison on target twice. Here at home, very exciting game in the SSE Airtricity League Premier Division last night. St Pat's and Shelbourne playing out a 4-4 draw at Talca Park. Sean Boyd on target twice. Rochelle's Owen Doyle scored twice from the penalty spot for the visitors. In the First Division, Waterford continued their hunt for second place. In the second tier, they beat Longford Town by 2-1 at Bishopsgate. This evening in the Champions League, it's Liverpool against Rangers in Group A. Tottenham in action against Eintracht Frankfurt in Germany. Both of those games underway from 8 o'clock. Tottenham in Group D. Shamrock Rovers youth side will put off a big comeback in their UEFA Youth League tie with AZ later. They trailed by 5-0 ahead of the second leg, which takes place at Tallaght Stadium from 7:15. The Republic of Ireland under-19s are in action in the Women's Euro qualifying this afternoon. They take on Poland from 1 o'clock. In darts, Darrell Gurney in first round action at the World Grand Prix later this evening. He takes on the former world champion Rob Cross, and there's racing at Galway this afternoon, where the first goes to post at 1:15.
The Leinster press conference yesterday was, I think it was Robin McBride, and he was asked about Jason Jenkins, who has been a hit in terms of on the field. He has been effective. Still you're wondering about Ireland signing second rows and whether or not should be giving more time to our own second rows. But anyway, notwithstanding that, I thought there was an interesting comment in the middle of this, which has led to a minor debate here. From a Mole point of view, Rob McBride talks about for ages and ages and ages about all the different things that he's added to the game. Great from the scrum, great from the maul, great in his detail. It's a big ask to come and learn a different language, learn a different way of doing things, but he's taken it in his stride, and I expect him to grow even further. He's come from Limerick. He was playing for Munster. What's the different language? I mean, that's proper shade finally in the Leinster-Munster rivalry, where they're like, you speak a different language down there.
Is that what he's referring to? Like some of us were thinking maybe he's referring to the language of rugby.
I mean, is the language of rugby from the forward pack in Munster that different from the forward pack in Leinster? If it is, I mean, this is Leinster playing Jess and Munster playing reversey, backgammon.
It has to be rugby language, doesn't it? It has to be, surely. I'd like to think so, because his English seems pretty good. But yeah, like it's one of those things. Maybe it was meant as a sly little dig towards Munster or Limerick people. Limerick people get in touch. Were you offended?
Are people feeling a bit sensitive about that? Joel K20 says the rules in hurling and football are hard for referees to referee. Also, most on the sideline don't understand some of the rules, thus the attack on referees. I think that I don't buy that not knowing the rules is the reason for the attack on referees. I think people who are prone to anger outbursts are using that as an excuse to be angry in the direction of referees and to take it out on them. I don't know, Carl, you're involved in GAA at a high level. What level of what do you think could be done to help secure respect towards referees?
Well, I definitely don't play to a high level, but
well, you play senior club.
I think the culture probably around the whole thing, right from underage up, I think that's where the work probably needs to start. And I think anybody that's involved in Ger, the vast majority of people that's involved are probably guilty of questioning a referee's decision at some point or other in their career, and there probably is a culture of it that has built up over the years. So probably starting, you could definitely implement stuff at under 8s, under 10s level that kind of could embed themselves from that age onwards, and it kind of becomes second nature to players and mentors alike. I know, like, for example, the under 8s and 10s, silent sidelines is one thing that they've tried to implement in various counties, and putting up signage at grounds and stuff like that. But it's got to start there, I think. But I think it's incumbent on everybody now that's involved in GA, whatever level you're at, to kind of start thinking about this a little bit more. And the referee situation is becoming very, very difficult in a lot of counties where referees simply won't be available to referee matches.
Would you think about becoming a referee? That was one of the things that Mark was talking about, former players being like fast tracked to referee big games. Would you ever consider it?
Don't think so.
I hope. The referees are seeing this, and I've seen it happen in grounds and even in my home county. Like, referees, when they make a bad decision in front of a full stand, are almost treated as subhuman. Like, some of the abuse that's hurled gets very personal very quickly. And then the physical stuff that we've seen in recent weeks is just... The scary thing about it is it wasn't that surprising. Like, when we saw the first ones coming out in Roscommon and other counties, different incidents drip feeding through, wasn't that surprising really, because we've all probably seen incidents where either physical contact or near physical contact was made with referees at matches. When there's a lot at stake and people let their mood and anger get the best of them. But yeah, that'd be my concern, that it's not that surprising, and that Jesus, not a hope would you be a referee. Why would you put yourself under that strain?
I think referees would make the point as well. Obviously, the PR around it recently has been very negative, and rightly so. It should be highlighted, and it's dreadful. But referees probably would also make the point that there are lots of opportunities if you do get involved in it, in terms of progression from club level to county level, and some great experiences when you do get to county level. Opportunities to referee in Croke Park at big games, provincial finals, stuff like that. Foreign travel can be involved in it as well. So there are a lot of positives, but obviously the negative stuff has taken over in recent weeks, and we really do have to address that. And it's so unfortunate to see all this stuff, and so difficult for the referees involved and the clubs involved.
I think miking them up at a senior inter-county level would very, very quickly expose... would very, very quickly bring up a new relationship between players where there's a quick explain of what happened, and everybody at home would go, oh, that's the rule, I understand it better now, because they've been told what it is. Like, it would definitely help from an education perspective. That's the top down. The bottom up, as you're saying, is grassroots. I think was a great idea that Micheál Martin had for, like, here's a box, you must stay in your box. If you're a mentor, you can stay in that box, and that's it, at all levels, and not just the big games at senior and county level. And I'm going to book you or send you off if you're outside that box twice. Off you go.
Even the whole idea of the referee speaking to only the captains as a conduit, that seems to be a given in rugby. Even in Sunday League soccer, that's starting to become a thing now.
You can't do that and get it, because, like, what if the goalkeeper is, if Cluxton's your captain and the right corner forward is the one who's doing stuff, it's like, oh, stop the whole game, go down. Do you know what I mean? I think
if it's serious enough, though, you have to.
Maybe, and certainly there's definitely things that you can do, and then what happens is that the outliers of any of the psychopaths involved in an incident at the club, like, they become exposed, and they very quickly become hopefully policed. But the clubs do have to take responsibility for this too. Anyway, it's a tangled issue. One last thing, several murals of Jurgen Klopp have been vandalised. People are throwing paint over them. James Pearce of The Athletic has just posted another one this morning. This is now becoming a pattern. The one thing I notice is it's blue paint. Does that matter?
Of course it matters. Of course it matters.
Does it matter?
Well, if it wasn't blue paint, you'd be thinking, are these angry Liverpool fans who are very quick to bounce on the man that's given them so much joy over the last number of years? It has to be Everton fans.
Right.
Surely.
9:32 this morning. Good stuff, Carl. Thanks for that. We will be back tomorrow. We'll be joined by the Anfield Wrap's Harriet Pryor on Liverpool Rangers tonight in the Champions League. Ronan O'Kelly will be on the line to talk about the Irish Parkinson's golf team, and the former Premier League winner Matt Jarvis will tell us why you had to be there, plus much more as well. Winger. Right now we're leaving you with Andy Mitten from last night's show, reflecting on Manchester United's derby drubbing. Enjoy.
Now then, you're welcome back. So just before we sign off for the evening, we might get the Manchester United perspective on the defeat yesterday. Andy Mitten is editor of United We Stand, regular voice on the show. Good evening, Andy. Thanks for the time.
No problem.
So I suppose in some respects it's interesting to assess how damaging this is for Manchester United at this stage under Ten Hag, to what extent it even is damaging, because there's a wider sense that Man City are just so good and so far ahead of Manchester United. There's nothing particularly earth-shattering or shocking about this in many ways.
Well, City are excellent. They're the champions. They've started this season well. They've been boosted by Erling Haaland, who did a little bit in the game against Manchester United on Sunday. I don't know of any United fans who expected the team to win at City on Sunday. A draw seemed improbable. What I hoped for was an improvement on last season's performance, where United were shredded, lost 4-1, and City eased off towards the end of the second half. I'm not convinced that there was much of an improvement. Manchester United scored 3 goals but conceded 6. It's a horrific scoreline. Coming after 4 straight wins in the Premier League for Manchester United, there'd been a gap. The team looked cold when they started. I think United suffered from that, but Manchester City absolutely destroyed Manchester United. I think what happens now is that the team have got to come back from it. There's 9 games in October. Given that City wasn't a game United were expecting to win, then again, neither was Liverpool at Old Trafford or Arsenal at Old Trafford. United fans are hoping that the team gets together, gets some decent points on the board, some decent wins in a month where the games are coming thick and fast. The next game will be in Cyprus on Thursday. That's the Europa League. I'm sure that all the players are going to get minutes this month. But yeah, you're speaking to me the day after Manchester United conceded 6 in a derby match. It's a horrific scoreline.
But that's just the reality. I mean, City are just that much better than them, you know, and they're better than they were last season. And it's, I'm sure, a grim thought for a Manchester United fan, but nobody is thinking, oh, wow, we need to reassess things or it's worse than we thought. It's just exactly what everybody thought. That's the massively strange thing now, like where Manchester United are and where City are.
Yep, it is. And that's the reality of the situation. That's the reality of a situation where the Glazers took over Manchester United and have taken over £1 billion out with interest payments, whereas Manchester City have had the financial state support which they've had, which has allowed them to go from being a figure of fun for a lot of Manchester United fans to the best team in England.
Ten Hag was, Eric Ten Hag speaking on MUTV last night, and he said there'd be an inquest of sorts today at Carrington where players and staff would be very much allowed to criticise each other. It's an open door. This performance is unacceptable, said Ten Hag. So maybe to get a flavour of things he might be saying today, he was asked after the game by Jeff Shreves why the manner of this loss, why was it so bad?
Lack of belief.
That's very surprising, having won your last 4. Were you surprised by that?
I'm surprised why we didn't bring that on the pitch. I've seen, but it's obviously 4 weeks ago, I've seen a different team, a different spirit, a different vibe, and convincement. And today we didn't have convincement. From the first minute on, we were not front foot and we were not brave in possession.
Easy to ask, but why was that?
That's always difficult to find out, especially straight after the game. I have to talk with my players. I have to find out. They know they can better. I see the performance Arsenal, see the performance Liverpool. But if you don't fight, and that's what we didn't, then you get a problem against a team like Man City.
Have you not seen a performance like that since the first 2 games of the season? I'm thinking particularly against Brentford.
I don't think you can compare it. This is definitely like against Brentford. Mental this, but different. Mental against Brentford we didn't run. Today we want to run, but we didn't follow the principles and rules. So undisciplined, but once again it was a lack of belief.
Quite an interesting assessment, Andy.
Yeah, a realistic one as well. And I don't think we can be too harsh on Ten Hag from a perspective of he's been in the job a couple of months. Pep Guardiola's been building that team for 6 years. And yet at the same time, Manchester United started 5 attacking players away to the best team in England at the moment. And that was a risk, and it was one which didn't pay off. And right from the first minute, and I spoke to mates of mine who were in the away end, and some of them left it well before the end. Right from the first minute, City had United's fullbacks exactly where they wanted them. Grealish and Phil Foden were causing problems right from the start. And Ten Hag didn't rectify that until half-time when Malacia was brought off. Dalot took a booking within 2 minutes. So Ten Hag got it wrong from a tactical perspective against Guardiola, who obviously used to work under at Bayern Munich. But he's new into the job. He's still building his team. If this was 2 years into Ten Hag, then I would strike a more critical tone than I do now. And yet I still think he got it badly wrong against Manchester City. The strikers were almost anonymous in the first half. It looked like you had a team which wasn't a team. The defence wasn't communicating well with the midfield, with the forwards. And I was getting really good information coming through to me during the game from people who work at a very high level in football, and they were just shredding Manchester United's tactics. And obviously praising City because City played so well and they took their chances. And United didn't have a look either. I think when Varane went down and then went off, the floodgates opened even more. So a bad day was getting worse all the time. My only surprise is that Manchester United managed to score 3 goals. Is that consolation? Is that even real?
No.
When Manchester City, once again, were able just to ease off in the last 20 minutes of a Manchester derby? That's what it's come to. That's how dominant Manchester City have been in the last couple of seasons in the derby.
Totally. Sorry to cut across you there. I do honestly think that when they scored their 6th and the fans were chanting, "We want 10," Guardiola thought to himself, there's a chance we'll score 10 here. I don't want that to happen. It's too early in the season for that kind of a performance and for expectations to go through the roof if they're not already through the roof, and for this team to get ahead of itself. So he whipped off all his best players. I mean, this was Manchester City declaring, like they could, Guardiola could have put 10 on United if they really wanted to.
Well, I'm not laughing like you are. I don't think it was funny to see as a Manchester United supporter. Maybe they could have scored 10, maybe they could have scored 20, maybe they could have scored 30. But they didn't. They scored 6, and they scored 6 against Manchester United in 2011 as well. And they're the best team in England at the moment. That's why they're the champions. They've got a fantastic manager, and they're getting results like that. I'm slightly surprised that 2 teams have taken points off them so far this season, because when I look at that Manchester City performance and the strength of it, coupled with the fact that their main rivals from a playing perspective, Liverpool, because I don't think Manchester United will be this season, I think the league could be over quite soon. And is that good for English football? Is the ownership model good for English football? That's another question. Manchester United have obviously spent a huge amount of money on new signings in the summer. They're going to take time to bed in. It was a rude awakening, I think, for Malacia at left back, reminding me of Patrice Evra when he made his debut in a Manchester derby. Martinez has been a good signing on the evidence seems so far. Anthony scored a great goal, but it was almost anonymous during the match. Christian Eriksen, I found it quite interesting. And one of the coaches pointed this out to me. He said, City have basically targeted Eriksen because they know he's creative. They've locked him out the game and succeeded in it. So Eriksen was Manchester United's player of the month for September. And just by nullifying him, that stunted Manchester United. And the coach said to me, they're quite happy to let Scott McTominay move forward. So Guardiola, as a tactician, is peerless. And he was as a player. I watched him play so many times, and he's such an intelligent talker, thinker, footballer, manager. And you're seeing someone at the peak of their power getting results like that.
Yeah. On the laughing point, I'm not laughing at Manchester United. It's almost just the ridiculousness of the situation. And to be fair, I did see Man United fans laughing when they scored the 2nd and 3rd, because, look, it's laugh or cry territory, and maybe life's a bit too short not to have some fun when you can. On the tactical points, so on the one hand, it feels like mute to bring up individual moments because City were just so overwhelmingly better in every way. But, for instance, that Eriksen point is a very interesting one, and there were definitely numerous times in the first 20 minutes when United were so poor on the ball, and Gary Neville went after McTominay a few times, who just seemed to have lost all composure on the ball. And Ten Hag was asked about Casemiro. I mean, if ever there was a game where United were going to sit in, Rodri's not there, we may do this low block business and hit them on the counter-attack, and it worked against Arsenal. If ever a game is made for Casemiro and his experience and everything else, you'd say that was the game. Ten Hag's explanation afterwards was, well, I never change a winning team, or try not to, but then he brings in Anthony for Elanga from Liverpool to Arsenal. So even that just, as good as McTominay has been, in hindsight, you have to say, well, that's a bad decision. And there were bad decisions made against Brentford. Like, you have to, if the gap is that big with City and you're Ten Hag, you're going to have to get your fair share right. And he definitely got that wrong.
Yeah, he got it wrong. And I don't think many United fans were complaining at the team selection before the match.
Sure.
I spoke to a City fan who's a family member, and he was inside the stadium, and he actually said, I'm nervous about this one with our team selection. I didn't reply because I just thought he's trying to lure me into a false sense of security here. And I've still not replied to him. and I've no plans to reply to him for a couple of months just yet. But at half-time, again, someone messaged me, and someone who again works at a very high level in football, not the manager of Manchester United. So the manager of United is the person who's making these decisions. It's very easy to sit on the sidelines, regardless of your qualifications, and made that exact point to me. Casemiro should be being used as a double screen alongside McTominay. That was his point, because of the way that Manchester City play. McTominay's had a good season. Yeah. He's surprised people. But it does seem bizarre to me that Casemiro, one of the best midfielders in the world, is not starting matches. I can see why, but at the same time, it still seems bizarre to me. This isn't someone who people are saying, yeah, he needs to get his fitness. He was man of the match in the European Super League this season. He left Real Madrid full of fitness, absolutely on top of his game. And I'm sure he'll get chances. It's the one thing we're going to see this month. Erik ten Hag will have license to experiment even more. What I think he did was he went for that settled team when United absolutely needed points after that terrible start to the season, with the defeats to Brighton, with the defeats to Brentford. And he's gone to a team that's got him 4 wins. They've done well. But we're 7 games in now. The league position is not a disaster for Manchester United because of those 4 wins, because rivals are dropping points all over the place, because United have not drawn any matches. The goal difference is another matter. Conceding 6, conceding 4 at Brentford doesn't look good at all. Varane has been a good player, so it was a worry when he went off. Hopefully he won't be out for too long. And it was just a terrible day for Manchester United. And I've been speaking to my mates in the away end and putting forward the 2s and 4s of whether it was right to leave early. Because I've got some mates who stayed to the end and refused to leave early, and I've got others who said, no, I had to get out of there. I just couldn't hack it anymore. And that's what football can do to you. As United fans, we've tasted some incredible moments against Manchester City, some brilliant derby matches. And yet, even when United were dominant, City had some very, very good results against Manchester United. And at Main Road, not really so much at Old Trafford. And I can remember going back to 89 when City won 5-1. Now, United were not a top team and neither was City. And that win sustained my blue supporting mates for years. 2 or 3 years later, they were singing to me, 1-2, 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 4, 5-1. I'm not sure 6-3 rolls off the tongue quite so easily. Yeah. And it stings Manchester United fans. It really does. And it would sting any football fan losing a derby match, let alone conceding 6 goals in a derby match. But what can you do? This is the situation both clubs are in at the moment. And Manchester United have got to go again. There's a lot of talented players there. I like Ten Hag as a manager. I do think he'll get it right. But to put him up against City in their absolute prime, pomp, call it what you will, was a huge challenge. And he got it wrong. He got it wrong on the day. The players got it wrong as well. And it was just a stinking bad day for Manchester United.
Yeah. And yet, I guess, I know we spoke after the Brentford game. I think we were both of the sense where Ten Hag deserved a lot more criticism that day than yesterday, even though the scoreline's just as ignominious in many ways. The Ronaldo situation, again, it's not the core point here, but I suppose it's bubbling away, in part because Roy Keane brought it up afterwards on Sky Sports. I know you're not in the country at the moment, so I just play it to you if people didn't hear it. Keane definitely feels that Ronaldo not coming on is a very strange one.
I think Man United are showing, they're just showing disrespect to Ronaldo. I think he should have been let go before the transfer window. I think the manager holding on to him, okay, you say you need options, but you don't hold on to Ronaldo to sit on the bench. He's one of the greatest players ever. He had options. This idea that he'd no options is rubbish. He did have options, 4 or 5 very good options to keep him. Okay, today the manager, he brought Micheál and he scored 2, so yeah, that's justified. But generally speaking, the bigger picture, he's not going to play Ronaldo. We know that. He's played in 1 or 2 European games. It's just going to get uglier as the season goes on. Okay, Ronaldo's motivated with the World Cup coming up, and you hope. But if he's sitting on the bench for Man United week in, week out, it's not good. It's just going to get ugly. And I think United have shown nothing but disrespect to Ronaldo. They should have let him go when the opportunity came. And as I said, he did have options to go. I know that for a fact. And holding him onto him to sit on the bench, I think it's ridiculous for a player of his stature.
So Ten Hag afterwards, Andy, as I'm sure you've seen, said that it was out of respect for Ronaldo that he didn't bring him on. He didn't want to bring on a player of his pedigree and esteem into the mess that was 4-0 and 5-0 and 6-1. I don't know if I fully buy that either. What's your read on what's going on there with Ronaldo and Ten Hag?
I don't fully buy it, but I also think he wouldn't have been able to do much coming on. The facts are as follows. Cristiano Ronaldo wanted to leave Manchester United in the summer. Cristiano Ronaldo missed the pre-season for Manchester United in the summer. Cristiano Ronaldo was offered to numerous clubs in the summer and no deal could have been done. I do not believe Manchester United would have stood in his way to let him go. He has a huge contract at Manchester United. He's the best paid player in the Premier League. He chose not to go. So my version of events is slightly different to Roy Keane's understandings of events. It is pretty sad, and I agree with him here. It's not an edifying look when it comes to this. And at his age, and indeed when Roy Keane left Manchester United, that was a sad end as well. You've got these great players. We're talking two of the very best players I've ever seen play for Manchester United. And it's not a good look. And I don't have any magical answer to that. Ed Woodward was the one who gave Cristiano Ronaldo that huge contract. And while Manchester United fans are splitting their opinions about him now, it was a 95% decision in favour from fans when he was signed. And people, including myself, celebrated him coming back to play for Manchester United. I think he had a decent season last year. Is he the future of Manchester United? No, he's not. So it's a difficult one all around. And I don't believe Erik ten Hag would have had a huge issue had Cristiano Ronaldo left Manchester United in the summer. I actually think he's handled Cristiano Ronaldo well.
Yes. I don't have your sources when it comes to Manchester United, but I was speaking to somebody who has a very good understanding of the day-to-day there recently, and there is some sulking going on. Nobody will be surprised to hear when it comes to Ronaldo. And Roy Keane there said this is going to get messy. And it is going to get messy. I don't know whether they try and address this in January or not, Andy, but post-World Cup, this could get very messy.
It could do. I mean, on one hand, he could go public and be very critical of the things he thinks have been wrong at Manchester United. So the club he left in 2009 is very different to the club he came back to when he came from Juventus. And he's entitled to those opinions. He'd be in breach of his contract if he came out and absolutely destroyed the club. And it's a tricky situation. I think the only way out of it is for him to be playing and scoring and to be the main man, but I just cannot see that happening at the moment. We've seen Anthony Martial be injured and Cristiano Ronaldo still not starting matches. And Ronaldo started at Brentford, by the way. He was on the pitch when Manchester United performed so poorly. So we're not looking at the same Ronaldo as we saw 3, 5, 10, 15 years ago. And it's a difficult one for Erik ten Hag. But he wanted to leave the club. Manchester United would have not pushed him out of the club. He wanted to leave the club. Whatever he says, he wanted to leave the club. And if he's sulking, then he's sulking. I think he should do the very best for the club he's contracted to. But he's going to see his version of the truth. And Erik ten Hag's going to have his version of the truth as well. He's got to look at it from a collective, from a team perspective. Cristiano's got to look at it from his perspective.
Okay, well, as you said, fairly defining October coming up, so we'll be chatting, I'm sure, in the coming weeks, Andy. Thanks very much for the time. Appreciate it, as always.
Cheers. I'm heading off now from Chicago to Cyprus, so that little short journey to see Manchester United's next match. I suspect Ronaldo may start that one. I hope he does as well, and it's important that United get a win against Ammonia Nicosia.
Yeah, well,
managed by Neil Lennon.
Oh, there you go. Wow. Well, safe travels. Thanks again, Andy Mitten, editor of United We Stand, with us.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
We were chatting to the